Board meeting is called to order. Madam Secretary, do we have quorum?
We have a quorum with all board members present. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Trimmer, would you read the board rules, please?
Matanuska Susitna Borough School District vision, mission, beliefs, goals, and principles. Vision: Matsu Borough School District will be a model of excellence in teaching, learning, and engaging all students. Mission: Matsu Borough School District prepares all students for success. Beliefs: we believe that the needs and best interests of students drive all decisions. All students can and want to learn. Educational choices and community participation are essential to student success. Goals: improve student success, achievement, and performance, develop excellent educators and leaders, use innovative practices to improve the education system, include families and community members in the education of our students, promote safe and healthy environments for all. Guiding principles: these guiding principles will drive our decisions and our responsibility to our students, families, and community. Stewardship, accountability, empathy, quality, integrity, respect, collaboration, and commitment.
Mr. Taylor, would you lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, may I hear a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Are there any objections? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Person to be heard on non-agenda items. Madam Secretary?
The following statement is read during the meeting prior to public comment. Public comment pertaining to education on non-agenda item is limited to 3 minutes per person per meeting. There will be up to 1 hour for persons to be heard. Public comment on agenda items will be taken at the time the item is considered. This is your opportunity to be heard, and the board will not respond to your comments. As per board policy 1312, individuals testifying may not discuss complaints against individual employees. Specifically under the agenda item, persons to be heard on non-agenda items, the following guidelines apply. The speaker states his or her name for the record. The speaker is limited to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker is limited to non-agenda items. Agenda items will be open for public comment as they appear on the agenda. The speaker's comments should be appropriate for all audiences, including school-aged children. The speaker is limited to comments of a general nature, positive or negative, which may not be attributable to any specific individual. Issues involving concerns specific to any single individual should be submitted in writing and given to the board clerk to be resolved. The issue may be determined to be appropriate for persons to be heard, or may be handled in executive session, or may be routed through a more appropriate complaint process. No disturbance or willful interruption of any board meeting shall be permitted. Persistence by an individual or group shall be grounds for the chair to terminate the privilege of addressing the meeting. The board may remove disruptive individuals and order the room cleared if necessary. This is not a question and answer time. Speakers may be referred to the superintendent or designate, or the board may take the issue under advisement. This is the first half hour. The second half hour is later in the meeting. And on the list, and with Heather Zimmerman. After Heather will be Dan, so line up. Is that okay? Okay. Thank you for your time. Recently, Matsu Career Tech School held its application period, resulting in 41 kids waitlisted for the 2021 school year. My request is that enough resources in the form of teachers and cubicles and whatever buildings they need can be allocated to let these 41 students into a school they really want to go to. A great way to start high school by going to the school of their choice.
My hope is that a greater number of kids would then have the opportunity that Career Tech provides, resulting in more young adults giving back to this community and state sooner.
Dan Nelson. And after Dan is Jackie.
Thank you. And I'm here for the same reason. My son is 14, and he's an honor roll student, and he's not able to go to Career Tech now. And he's just
Please state your name for the.
Dan Nelson.
Yeah, and anyway, long story short, I talked with Mr. Okeson, and he says we need one teacher and one cubicle or classroom, and I will build that classroom and pay for that classroom. And have a lot of people that would love to donate money to that cause. I have no knowledge of how to hire a teacher, so I know that is what you guys do. But if we could have a teacher, that's 47 kids, and I know there's going to be some of these kids that drop out, but these kids will have opportunities, and my kid's been running a boom truck since he was 9 years old, and build houses and rigging and swing load and things like this. So it's a little bit different. You make straight A's, but it's not exciting. As soon as I talk to him about Career Tech, he is out of this world excited about it. So all I'm saying is if we can come up with one teacher, I can come up with a classroom. And I'm here and I'll help you guys. And what I need is information on how to do this, how to get the money, the financing, whatever we need for that one teacher. Thank you.
Jackie Cunningham, and for Jackie is Debbie Rutherford.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Cunningham. I've been a teacher for 28 years, and this is my 4th year in Alaska. And honestly, I am not seeing a future for teachers here in the Matsu. My children are here, my grandchildren are here, we all came up here, and we love it. But we have got to make this an attractive profession in the valley. I was listening to your goals. Your goals said that you're focused on student success, excellent education leaders. It's our responsibility to make that happen. I'm concerned about students. We shouldn't be forcing them into classes with 35 other students. We have been cut teachers every year since I've been here. We are already cut to the point that in English classes, teachers have 35 students. Elective classes, teachers have 30 to 40 students. This is too many for a teacher to not only manage, but also educate. There's two sides to education. I have to have classroom management, and I have to be able to educate. With 30 to 40 students in a classroom, that's difficult. If we cared about keeping great teachers in this valley, we would not be forcing their pay to go down each year because of the rising health insurance cost that is inevitably going up. We cannot leave that burden on our teachers. This is the lowest paid district of all the 5, and I've been talking to teachers. They're choosing other options. I cannot think of a profession that has to fight for a livable wage that doesn't go backwards every couple of years. Think of a profession that has to deal with that. A profession. I spend my own money for required continuing education to keep my certification up. I'm not reimbursed. And I'm asking you, please, come to the table and settle this contract with the teachers. They are not asking a lot. They are asking for what is fair. Please come to this table, settle this contract, and settle it now. It is a fair request that they are asking of you. Thank you.
Debbie Rutherford, and after Debbie is Jeff and Michelle Stowe.
Good evening, I'm Debbie Redford, Dr. Grant, members of the board, and we're going to talk about how we might handle a situation like this recent travel ban better next time. This recent travel ban has affected probably 20 groups, hundreds of families. I'm guessing $500,000 in travel funds of families' monies. In this situation, all those groups were not the same, and they should not have been treated the same. And this should not have been decided with zero parent input. There are plenty of situations where I believe the district has total purview, and I completely support their authority to make unilateral decisions about things. But this was not one of those cases. This was our money, our kids, our vacation time. Many of these groups were traveling to countries that were not on the CDC watch list. Therefore, the tour groups were not offering any kind of a refund. Travel insurance does not apply because they call this a fear-based decision. Because the company, they were offering vouchers to places like Asia and Italy, but not to places where there was no virus. Many groups were loosely associated with the school district, very loosely. They weren't the band going to some issue. They were just happened to be teachers who organized an opportunity for students. Next time, let's try calling an emergency meeting and pulling in parents. If you've got information that we don't have, then share it with us and get parent buy-in. Instead, the way this was done, it caused a division in our community over how people felt about the decision. Trust is key in any situation like this at every level of government. A friend of mine said it reminds her of when she lost trust was when she was a child and she found out that hiding under her desk was not actually going to protect her from a nuclear bomb. Personally, I believe this was an overreaction. There is no travel ban. Families and employees are still going on vacations, which makes this ban meaningless. And there is an equity situation, even for those who get vouchers. Are their families going to be able to afford to use those vouchers somewhere? If I told you that 30 million people are diagnosed and 15,000 people have died from a highly contagious virus, we do have a vaccine, would you ban travel? Because that's every year with the flu. That's the situation. Our children are learning a harsh lesson in fear-based decision-making. We teach them to use data and facts. These decisions can't be made in a vacuum. Let's decide this together next time. Thank you.
Jeff and Michelle Stone.
I'm not both of them.
Jeff.
Good evening. Thanks for your time. I'm here to talk about the charter school issue. I'm a long-time Valley resident, and became aware of me that there's some issues there.
State
Mike?
name.
Oh, Jeffrey Stone. Excuse me. That's my wife, Michelle. And I just have a concern. I just want to let my concern be expressed, face to a name kind of thing. I had a meeting with one of the administrative staff. They were very informative. I learned a lot of things I didn't know. I think there's a problem that needs to be addressed. And I hope between all of us, you guys included, the administration, we can get it taken care of in the best way possible. Because my experience with some of these teachers in Matsu made a difference in my children's lives. That's why I'm pushing them towards career tech, and to get them focused and going in that direction is a lot of work. So I'm just hoping we can address that issue. And like I said, put a name to a face, and I'll be talking to all of you off and on, I'm sure, and Mr. Justin England. And I hope that we can come up with a resolution that suits everybody. Thank you.
That concludes my list.
Hi, my name is Diane Kishib. I'm president of the Matsu Education Association, and I just wanted you to know that it is MSEA's goal to get this contract settled by the end of this semester. And I know that you guys went into executive session last night, so I would like you to come back to the table and let's make meaningful movement and get this settled as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to approach the bench? Please state your name.
Hi, my name is Bobby Davis, and I agree wholeheartedly with the parent who was talking about this trip. You guys, we don't have, you know, $5,000+ just to throw away without any say in a manner whatsoever. And I know that John has worked tirelessly on our behalf to hopefully reschedule this trip, but it's going to cost another $300 per person, which I think you guys should fit the bill on this, because it was your guys' decision to cancel this trip, not mine, not his, not the kids', and not the CDC. You guys didn't listen, I mean, you guys didn't even think about asking what we wanted for our kids for their vacation. You know, it wasn't your trip. You guys should have asked. I think you guys ought to fit that bill. That's all I gotta say about that.
Is there anyone else who wishes to approach the bench? Seeing none, we will move on to Borough and City reports. Mr. Cottle.
President Burgey, Superintendent Goet, board members, Burt Cottle, Mayor City of Wasilla. I have just a couple items here. This Thursday at the Menard Center, the 2020 Text Expo from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's joined the Matsu School District K-12 students demonstrating innovative learning with advanced technology. Also at the Menard Center this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, U14 Tier 2 state hockey tournament. First game starts at 7 a.m. on Friday. Championship game is on Sunday at 5 p.m. Also at the Menard Center this Friday, Alaska Combat Entertainment. Doors open at 6:45. Fights start in the building at 7:45. Finally, at the Menard Center this Saturday, 2020 Seahawks Spring Football and Cheer Camp. That's from 8 a.m. to noon. And don't forget that we still have on display at the Wasilla Museum the power of children making a difference. And I think we're the only ones in the state to get that on display from the lower 48, and that's with Anne Frank, Ruby Bridges, and Ryan White. And then we just had a fundraiser last Saturday night at the Menard Center for the Veterans Wall. So anybody here who's a veteran or knows a veteran that has served, is serving, or my grandson just got out of boot camp, so his name will go on the wall this summer. We have additional space for over 2,000 names, but we raised $22,000 Saturday night for the wall, and the Matsu girl indicated last night at their meeting that they matched up 22,000. So we'll have enough money this summer to finish the last and final phase of the Veterans Wall this summer. So that's all good news. So thank you.
Moving on, we don't seem to have any administrative reports, so we will go to the superintendent and student update and student advisory board representative update. Ms. Jensen?
Thank you. So the last SAB meeting was on February 11th at Rochelle High School. While we were there, we had a budget presentation, and it was really fun to get to look over that and to see how our students would change our budget and what we could do to help our school district. Our school-to-school committee worked on Happy Run planning, and the Happy Run happened on Monday, March 2nd. That was a lot of fun. I did not get to attend, but I heard great things about it. Our out-of-school committee is working on putting together a backpack drive to grow our Food for Youth program. And our in-school committee is working on a boys volleyball resolution and an advanced teen dating violence awareness program. Our next SAB meeting will be on March 24th at Wasilla Middle School, and we are trying to get a resolution together to add a middle school representative to our student advisory board executive board. I was just at the Menard Center earlier this evening, and I got to set up my booth for the Tech Expo. It looks great, and I'm looking forward to that tomorrow. Wasilla High School is also putting on a talent show on March 24th from 7 to 9 p.m. and Ms. Morrissey has a flyer to go out for that. And we had 5 students representing our student population at our last activities committee meeting on the 12th of February. We are very happy about all that our students have been doing.
Thank you, Ms. Jensen. Dr. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to spend the superintendent update focused on the COVID-19 virus and what we as a district have chosen to do in response to that. There we go. Did you do that or did I? Okay. So you and I are going to work together. All right. So this is a map, and it's updated daily on the CDC website, and it is from the World Health Organization of confirmed COVID-19 cases. And what's important to know is that as of this afternoon, 70 locations internationally, including the U.S., have confirmed cases of COVID-19. As of this morning, there's 13 states in the U.S. reporting a total of over 129 cases. 80 of those cases were transmitted in the community. There are 11 deaths. Alaska still has no documented cases. 4 individuals have been tested negative. 2 individuals are still cases under investigation. Yesterday, the CDC recommended higher education cancel existing foreign exchange programs and postponing upcoming trips. Risk assessment levels for countries or states are changing each day as testing capabilities are further developed. I think it's important to note that just at the end of last week, Alaska was able to do in-state testing. So if you think about this virus, it's very likely that transmission and identification of cases is ahead of are divergent, that it has spread farther than countries have the capability to identify. So one of the things that we want to focus on in schools, and a framework that we talk with our principals, that we're talking with the board and our community, is really what can we do that are outside of non-pharmaceutical interventions. There's currently no vaccine for this virus. And so there's really 3 areas that we can focus on. Those things that are personal, those things that are community-based, and those things that we can do within our facility. So I'm going to talk about each of those 3. I'm going to talk about what the best practices are and then how we as a district are responding. So best practices are really common sense with many viruses, including the flu. Stay home if you feel sick. Cover your coughs. Sneeze with a tissue. Wash hands frequently with soap and water, at least 20 seconds. Avoid touching nose, eyes, and mouth. Practice social distancing and get the flu shot. Again, the flu shot, this is not a vaccine for COVID-19. But in individuals, if we're able to get individuals with the flu shot and they are not falling ill with the flu, that's one less strain that will happen on our medical system. Social distancing is really staying 5 to 6 feet away from somebody that may have symptoms. It's really spread through respiratory droplets. So when people sneeze, a sneeze can go 4 to 5 feet out. So as we move on to how we are, as a district, are going to responding within personal actions, the number one most important thing that we can do is really educate our staff and students. So we have a website at the end that we have put up and that will have resources available. We spoke with our principals today. We are expecting that when they come back from spring break, it's highly probable that we might have a case by then in Alaska, that anxiety within our community will really raise. That we want them to make time to talk with our students about best practices. We're going to facilitate on-site flu shots for our employees. We've done that in the past, and we're reaching out to vendors right now. We're going to stop handshaking routines. So this is capturing kids' hearts. All of our secondary schools, they shake students' hands as they come in. We're going to be suspending that probably for the remainder of the year. We have purchased additional medical and disinfectant supplies, so we will be providing schools with tissues and additional hand sanitizer, especially for those classrooms that don't have a sink within them, which is typical in a secondary classroom. So moving on to community actions, you'll see here, and I'm going to spend the most amount of time on this because this certainly is the thing that's had the most amount of impact on our students. Community actions are things that we can make sick leave and attendance policies more flexible, postpone or cancel trips, modify mass gatherings, and temporarily dismiss school. I have the bottom 2 in blue. We have not done those yet.
but it is, if there was widespread transmission in our community, we would have to look at things like graduation or large-scale sport events and modifying those. There have been 2 cases as of today with an employee in a school and then with a student in another school. They closed those schools temporarily and are engaging in large-scale disinfecting and fumigating of those buildings. So what we've chosen to do in the district, and I'm going to read the list and then I'm going to come back and talk in a lot more detail, and then I'm going to allow the board time to ask questions because this is the area that I think you'll have the most questions on. We canceled international and out-of-state travel for March and April. We reinforced with our principals the criticality of accurate attendance records. We will be monitoring those both at a site level and at the IIT at district office to see if there's a spike in people that are not coming to school. We want to make sure that we are tracking the report of flu-like symptoms by site and region. We would want to report that in an aggregate, not at any individual level, but make sure that we're coordinating with public health. This part is very important, and I think in our society today, I know in schools we often gut things out when we feel sick. It's sometimes almost a badge of honor that we just keep on going through it. For our teachers, making lesson plans is overwhelming, and sometimes when you feel bad, it almost seems easier to come to school. But we really want to encourage people to stay at home if they are not feeling well, especially if they have a fever. The majority of people that have had COVID-19 have a fever, 98%. So one of the things that we're going to be sending out a mass notification on the workday after spring break to all of our employees to really encourage them to stay home, and for our schools that we relax our perfect attendance policies. There is no cure to this right now. I want to keep on repeating that. Our goal with all of these strategies is simply to slow down the transmission of it. And finally, we want to develop supplemental education opportunities in the event of a school closure. We've been asked a lot about e-learning. We are not in a position where we can say we can just stand up e-learning for all students robust all day long. But what we can do is start thinking about what are supplemental learning activities to continue that continuity. So I'm going to go into detail right now on the cancellation of international and out-of-state travel. During the month of March and April, the Matsu Borough had 9 international and 10 out-of-state trips planned, impacting over 300 students. There was a lot of concern expressed about the blanket cancellation of all trips, especially those in the lower 48 and to South America. The issue with this virus is that it is rapidly changing, and there's really 2 risks within the virus. One is certainly contracting the disease, but the other is being subject to the control measures, quarantine. In speaking directly with the Alaska State Chief Medical Officer, the concern was the risk of quarantine while broader in the lower 48. We were not prepared for extended quarantines, and with a rapidly changing landscape and identified cases, we were not in a position to try and predict where outbreak might occur next. Therefore, we chose to cancel all travel. Administration is actively working with all vendors to secure refunds. In the event vendors are unwilling to reschedule or refund, we are asking all trip sponsors and principals to track the losses. Once this is all resolved, administration will evaluate the total loss and our ability to assist. In a phone conference today between the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development and the superintendents, the Alaska State Public Health recommended that schools do cancel domestic and international travel. Finally, there have been a lot of questions about the approval and cancellation process for international and out-of-state travel. Travel during the calendar year is decided by administration. When it comes before the school board, it is when it is outside of the calendar year, usually predominantly in the summer. So in the springtime, the board will see many requests for their approval. So I take responsibility for this decision. I certainly consulted many resources, including our cabinet, the Alaska State Chief Medical Officer,
And I did not do it lightly. Canceling a trip for kids, some of these students, it's the trip of a lifetime. I'm not in a place where I felt like we could predict what area would be safe and not safe. Are there any questions on the community actions and those related to travel?
Mr. Hart.
Is there a policy before we make decisions like this to involve stakeholders?
I don't recall, I don't think there's a policy when we're making decisions of student safety on the spot that we're going to stop and ask all people what their opinion is. And part of my charge that you hire me to do is use my professional judgment.
I don't disagree on the spot would be something like the building burning down or something like that, I get. But a lot of these trips are probably going to places that the State Department right now has labeled as a level 1, or maybe not even rated, as far as travel advisories. We certainly had time here to involve stakeholders. And that's why I was asking if this is something, this is a tool we need to put in place to where the next time we have to go down the decision matrix, notify or involve stakeholders is in there somewhere.
Certainly the board policy is your purview, and if you want to create that for the future, that is something that you can request, and we will comply with that.
Member Ponder.
Appreciate the presentation. Just one question. If there were students in a foreign country, and foreign countries definitely do things very differently than we experience here in the United States, and kids were in a hotel or what have you, and that hotel was quarantined, and there was kids down there, how full do you think the school board room would be, and how many cameras do you think would be on this, if that were the case? Just speculative, what do you think?
I think we'd have the fire marshal here. We'd be over capacity.
Thank you.
Member Larson.
Oftentimes, we have a sister city over in Seroma that sends over a delegation over here. And we also have other foreign schools and foreign travelers come here for presentations and different events. Have those been looked at?
So right now, we are looking at what we have in the spring for incoming foreign exchange students, any Seroma trips. We're also looking at, we did cancel all business professional development travel, and we are looking at out-of-state consultants that are also coming in. We will have those decisions made by next week, but I think the same thing would go that if we had a trip from Seroma coming here, Japan is an area of concern right now, we would cancel that.
Member Taylor.
Is there a plan or mechanism for people affected by this to reach out to administration to assess their damages and things like that?
So we have a website that we put up, and risk management has been contacting all of the vendors. It's been sent to all of the trip sponsors and all of the principals. We did a phone conference with them on Monday afternoon, got the website up yesterday, and already have made tremendous progress. Where vendors were on Monday in saying that they would provide refunds, especially to those areas that have not been deemed to have cases yet, and where they were this afternoon was very different. This is quickly, quite frankly, I think we're ahead of the decision-making curve on this, and within 2 weeks, this would be a very similar decision the school districts across the nation will be making. And so this is very difficult right now, but it will, this will continue to be a practice, and so vendors are becoming more lenient as the week is going by. The previous public testimony that we heard that the liability could be $500,000 on just the trips in March and April. The district's not in a position where we can say we will blanket refund all that. That's why we're working so diligently to have our vendors reimburse or reschedule those. When it is all done and we know what those travel fees are that are consequences or penalties,
then we will assess all that. We've asked all of the trip sponsors and the principals to track that and see how the district can help. I can tell you that it's bad enough that we had to take the opportunity away from kids. I certainly do not want us to be taking their hard-earned money away as well.
Just to follow up, do we have a legal liability with any of that?
No, we do not. Our primary vendor is EF Tours. They have very clear language that this is a contract between parents and the student. And the company. It is not with the school district. So that's why we were clear that some parents have chosen to still send their kids on this trip. And this particular vendor has said that they can go without a school staff. We have told our employees that they may not be involved as employees in this. And if there are parents that want to go on that they will have to take personal leave to go on that trip. And we really encourage them not to be involved in facilitating this at all. That I think that is a personal liability that they should not be taking on. When this is all done and we look at who did go and who did not go, I will be looking into whether or not staff facilitated having parents take those kids on those trips, and they will not be allowed to travel with students anymore.
Member Larson.
You may not have this information, I don't. After spring break, when children come back, parents come back from vacations outside, so forth and so on, and we're monitoring them being out sick. I think it takes 2 weeks until it's germination, and kids start getting sick. Who and where do they get tested for this virus? And locally here. How are we going to determine if they got the flu or they have coronavirus?
That is not something that we would diagnose as a district, and from my understanding of the medical degree from the Alaska State Chief Medical Officer this afternoon, they can test at a state level. So what they are encouraging people to do is to call their provider if they believe that they have symptoms, not to simply present in a medical office, and then from there they will do a risk assessment and do testing. Right now, I believe our testing in the state of Alaska is limited to approximately 100 people. More testing kits are getting available. That's one of my concerns with this virus, is that in the United States, our ability to do mass testing on this is incredibly limited. Can you imagine what it might be for countries that is not as developed, that may be reporting that they don't have incidents yet, but the likely is they maybe don't have the capacity to identify that they have incidents?
One follow-up question. I don't know if you can find out, or it would be kind of information maybe that should be out there when spring break is over, just to ease a few people's minds of how, again, somebody gets tested and where they get tested. I know they go to the provider, but the state office doesn't make any sense. I mean, do they have to go somewhere to get that? Is it that brought out? This information we don't have as a school district, I realize. It just may be information that we should look into a little bit, because if that coronavirus does come to the valley, it would be nice to know it's here and not being spread around with no knowledge. Just a preemptive look at it. Thank you.
Member Potter.
You've mentioned EF Tours is who we predominantly use. Is that annually, or is that just this school year that we use EF Tours?
Excuse me. I think that is one of the largest vendors that we use, especially for international trips. These are things that usually individual teachers, with the permission of their principal and then the permission of administration, coordinate on their own with parents. They do a lot of fundraising though within the school, and so to say that it's just between the parent and EF Tours
we do facilitate this. We provide the clients and we provide a lot of the time in coordinating.
And so I would imagine they value us being a customer of theirs. And I would be curious to know, not that we need to follow up with this, but curious to know what other tour companies and travel companies and agencies are doing and how they're handling this, and to utilize that as leverage if EF Tours is pushing back that we'll take our business elsewhere because we see how other companies are dealing with the issue. So
Member Taylor.
I just have a question, maybe it can be answered just through board docs or something like that, but how long have we, as a school district, been involved in travel type situations for our students? And why are we, as a school district, involved in that instead of private businesses? I don't mind that being answered elsewhere in another forum, but it is something I have on my mind.
We'll do a historical look at that, and we'll get that information in the next board connect.
So, I have one question for you, Dr. Goyette. You said you mentioned meeting with the travel companies, it seems almost like once to twice a day. And it sounds like the situation is evolving. So as this evolves, when will we be able to have projections as to whether we are going to be able to reschedule, what reschedule, to see the scope of the cost to the trips that are being canceled? When do you think that we will have, and I know this is going to be a rough estimate, some type of feedback that we'll be able to give back in the community?
We are updating, we have a spreadsheet, an online spreadsheet. I will send that link to the board members. We're updating that repeatedly throughout the day, and trip sponsors are checking on that. So I would imagine by the end of the week or midweek next week at the latest, we will have resolution to the March and April trips.
Any further questions? No? You're free to go.
All right, so I've covered in the non-pharmaceutical interventions, NPIs, personal, what we can do personal, and what we can do community. And our third area is in environmental. And so this is really cleaning facilities, and then also what our facilities could do to help us in large-scale events. So when we look at cleaning surfaces, we talk about disinfecting. So the current disinfecting solution that we use is called Virus. Our custodians use it, and when they disinfect a surface, they clean it, but then they have to go back through with it with water to remove that disinfectant because it can be an irritant. So we have purchased additional disinfecting supplies, not only for our custodial staff, but for our employees as well. We will have them in every classroom and in our main common areas. We do not have enough custodial support to disinfect all hard surfaces and commonly used areas every single day, so we're going to be asking our employees to help with that. We're also purchasing personal protective equipment. This is for our nurses and any other first responders that may be responding to people that we feel like could be at risk for having the virus. We're going to increase our disinfecting routines with our custodians, our staff, and we're working with transportation, our busing providers, to mirror these same routines. So they will be wiping down seats with disinfectants and commonly used areas. In the event that we had a case in a school, in the lower 48, those schools are shutting down for a period of time so they can do robust cleaning, disinfecting, fumigation. And so we are putting out inquiries to vendors on what that would look like so that we would be ready in the event that we would have to respond quickly. Principals are identifying isolated areas for individuals that may be sick until we can transport them out of the building. And then we're coordinating with borough and state regarding support for large-scale efforts. For example, if we had to do a large temporary school dismissal, our nutrition services can produce 50,000 meals a day. During the earthquake, we were able to use transportation, our buses, to deliver meals to our high-poverty areas in Houston and Big Lake. If we had to shut down schools, we have the capacity to be able to provide those. So we are preparing for the worst, but hoping for the best. So finally, our last slide is a website.
This information is changing so quickly. When it first came out, it was that it was spreading rapidly, but it was not as deadly as the seasonal flu. Now they're saying that it may be more deadly than the seasonal flu. The reality is we don't know. It's dynamic. It is changing all the time. So we're trying very hard not to create static documents, but simply things that we can continue to update. So this is linked to our main webpage. It's a website available for our community and our staff, and we will continue to put information up there as we gather more information. That is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Goya. Moving on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of February 18, minutes of February 19, the Birch Tree Charter School FY21 calendar, and the Fronteras Charter School FY21 calendar?
I move the consent agenda.
Second.
Is there any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda passes. Moving on to item 7, action items. Item A, K-8 math, algebra 1 and 2, and geometry curriculum. Is there a motion and a second to bring that forward?
Move action item A, K-8 math, algebra 1 and 2, and geometry curriculum.
Second.
Okay. Is there an administrative report?
I do have some follow-up information in regards to last meeting's administrative report. A board member requested more information regarding 8th grade students enrolled in Algebra 1. Currently, 17% of this year's 8th graders, 257, are enrolled in Algebra 1. 25% of them are economically disadvantaged, compared to, as a district, we're closer to 38-40%. So you want those cohorts to match. And then we had also disaggregated that. 70% of our students in Algebra 1 are Caucasian, 11 are 2 or more races, 8% are Alaska Native, 7% are Hispanic, 2% American Indian, 1% Asian, and 1% Pacific Islander. A board member also requested information regarding remedial math placement. We can only look at that for the University of Alaska system. We don't have a mechanism in place to be able to look at that nationwide, other than we could do surveys of, I guess, our recent graduates, and we should do that. But in fall of 17, we had 18% of that freshman class that required remedial math. In 18, it was 16%, and last year it was 8%. We do attribute part of that drop to efforts that we have made within schools to make sure that students are ready for that math with APEX support and other materials I talked about. But I also think that the middle college and ANSEP has something to do with that, because we're getting students through that with scaffolded support. That's all the information I have.
At this time, is there any public comment concerning this issue? Seeing none, do we have any board discussion? Yes, Mr. Member Palmer.
I got a handful of things. I know there was a report on some of the responses provided regarding some of the questions that were asked last board meeting. I know that there was a request for other types of curriculum that were out there that aren't stamped with a Common Core stamp within them. I looked for that, I didn't see that. There was also a deed letter that was referenced that stated something in regards to Common Core that was also requested, and that was a letter addressing Alaska Statute 1407.020. I looked at that and didn't see that. Do we have any information on either of those two things? Thank you.
So we talked about this last time. The Common Core, our Alaska state standards are aligned with the Common Core, and we are required to follow the Alaska state standards. There is a statute that talks about no money being spent on Common Core, but when I discussed this with the commissioner in detail, his understanding is that that is deed money. I know that that created some concern within the board, but the reality is what does that mean? You can't spend any money on Common Core? There's multiplication in the Common Core. Does that mean we can't buy any materials?
that teach multiplication or phonics. And the reality is if the board doesn't approve these materials and this curriculum, we'll use the existing one. That's aligned to the Common Core because that's aligned to the Alaska State Standards. And so the challenge is not whether or not we can bring you different curriculum. There is a program out there that we used to have, Saxon Math. It is not aligned with Common Core. They did not change it. But if we were to recommend that to you, we would be going against the law in teaching Alaska State Standards.
So was there not a letter from Deed regarding those things, or was that just a conversation that you had with the commissioner?
I have an email that is a one-sentence response that says it's his understanding that that isn't related to school district money, it's related to Deed, and I had a conversation with him on the phone. There's not clarity around it, so there's some conflicting things. I'm bringing forward to you materials that are aligned to the Alaska State Standards.
And I mean, as far as the other types of curriculum, on the Department of Education, under mathematical content standards, it states that the standards, which I'm assuming are all the standards that are written out that you had indicated, align themselves closely with Common Core, but it states that the standards themselves do not dictate curriculum or delivery of content. So if you had a Saxon Math program that was put out and implemented while you still had software licenses for Common Core, creating a hybrid between the two with a focus on Saxon Math, what would be the problem with that? I mean, that would be right along the lines with Common Core, Alaska Standards and what DEET has stated.
So curriculum is really our scope and sequence and our pacing guides. We identify materials that align with those. So when we look at Alaska State Standards and we create our curriculum maps, we look for materials that are aligned with teaching those. Saxon is not aligned with teaching that. Some of the robust changes that occurred was a lot of Algebra 1 got pushed down and was complete by 8th grade. Algebra 2, a good portion of what we used to teach in Algebra 2 is now down in Algebra 1. Those programs have not been aligned. So we only vetted those programs that were aligned to the Alaska State Standards, which are aligned to the Common Core. And this is a board decision. If you want to vote against this, we'll use the current curriculum that we're using. If you want to vote that we go back through the entire curriculum process, we will do that. That's board discretion.
Was the district aware of SB 236 and the introduction of that bill short titled Crime of Teaching Common Core? This is currently in the Education Committee.
Would you please tell me a little bit more about that?
Basically, it just rolls out the fact that there's a fine associated with teaching anything using Common Core standards. It updates the current statutes to make it so that there can't be one-off conversations that might go against what is both on DEET and what the statute states. I mean, the DEET states on their website that the standards themselves do not dictate curriculum or delivery of content. I think there's a lot of latitude given to the districts, as you've indicated just now, on what the board can do. I think one of the biggest things that we talk about is reading and math and how, we may not be where we could be with those two areas. And one of the biggest things I hear as well is that, there's a lack of parental involvement. But I think it makes it really difficult when there's a curriculum out there that when a third grader brings home their math and the parent tries to help and they can't help because 5 plus 5 isn't really 5 plus 5. That's not the answer they're looking for. They want 5 minutes worth of explaining how you got to an answer, whether it's correct or wrong. So I think having a curriculum established that is parental friendly and allows the district to dictate what that curriculum is and the delivery of the content, we can still hit the standards, but just in a different way.
So I believe the bill that you're referencing is Representative Reinfeld's bill. I'm aware of that being introduced. And it's something that from the beginning, from when the new Alaska State Standards, that has been really a mission of hers to change that. We are not
making recommendations or doing work based on bills that people have introduced. We're doing work based on the current statutes. When we reference our achievement, it's really PEAKS achievement, and PEAKS assesses the Alaska State standards. So while I am concerned, as you are, about our results on the Alaska State standards on PEAKS assessment, if we chose curriculum that was not aligned with the Alaska State standards, it's probable that our assessment results would go down. So again, I really do not have further information. I think this is a philosophical, political issue more than a curriculum issue, and I defer to the board to vote.
Dr. Rowe.
I know that we have spent a lot of time on looking at our math over the years. We've looked at a lot of different math programs. And we have parent academies so that parents could learn how we have changed the way and look at a different way of teaching it. And, if you've got 10 people who showed up, we were lucky. And we did try often to do this. So, parent involvement is extremely important. The academies were at different times, and so we tried very hard to bring this about. I think that, if you have a different way of teaching this at home, you can do that. You may be confusing your child from the school. If you want to go into the classroom, I am sure a teacher would be very welcome to have you come in and observe how it's taught. I had difficulty working with my grandchildren, and I realized that I was still working on something that was 50, almost 60 years ago. So there are different ways of looking at it. I believe that the philosophical issues here is not something that we can solve today. We need the scope and sequence to be aligned so that we are not putting our kids at risk of missing out more than they have. We realized the studies we've done said that our 6th grade math is not meeting the standards that we need. So we looked at that, and we've done some reassessing of how to teach it and what order to teach things. I think that we are on the right track. I'd like for us to vote to approve this so that we can move on. It doesn't mean that we stop looking at different curriculum, but I think that this is something that needs to be taken care of today. Thank you.
Member Larson.
It's a very interesting discussion we're having here. I don't remember anything in my literature anywhere saying that this is a political issue or some sort of politics going on here. What I see this as, if our children and parents are having a tough time teaching 3rd grade math at home, it takes a village to teach a child. You're limiting that child to the classroom only with no assistance in the home. If it's that tough to teach a 3rd grader, then there should be some sort of criteria or some sort of curriculum sent to the parents to help them assist in teaching that course. And I assume there is, but I don't know, but a 3rd grade math course shouldn't be that difficult to teach. And there's nothing wrong with looking at a curriculum. There's nothing wrong with reviewing curriculum, and nothing wrong with questioning curriculum. And I think this is a very good discussion to do so. I think that the whole ball of wax got mixed up in politics years ago, but I don't see it getting mixed up in politics now. What I see is we want to educate our children. We want to educate them in the best way of teaching them mathematics or anything else in a simple way of doing so. And have our parents assist. But if we got curriculum that won't allow our parents to assist, then they're only stuck to that classroom setting. In elementary school, teaching math is in segments or blocks, and that would be the only time that you could teach it. It's like teaching reading. We used to do it with my kids, we used to do it with our grandkids. When they had a reader, you would read that same reader at home and be able to help the school teacher and help their test scores and help them have the ability to learn how to read. And I think that's what we're looking at in math also. Thank you.
So parent involvement, parent-friendly materials was one of the criteria that we looked at when we were vetting, because that's a common concern that we hear. And so I'm going to ask Executive Director of Instruction, Tracy Peterson, to talk about what materials are available for parents.
Yeah, through the chair, Member Larson, every chapter, okay, first I just want to clarify that the materials that we're looking at are just for middle school. We're going to do a materials review for elementary next year. But this conversation is great, and it still will apply. We'll probably have the same things that we're looking at. We always want parents to be able to use our materials and understand them. So every chapter starts with a letter to parents. Examples were sent to all of our middle school parents for these curriculum associates ready math materials. And parents reviewed the top 2 programs were sent to all of our parents 4th through 7th grade. And parents, so after looking at the 2 programs that were presented to them, 70% of parents liked what Ready Math had better. And there were videos included. I'm not sure if you all had a chance to look at those things that were shared with you as well, but videos were included, letters to parents were included, information about the math is included for parents. They designed their materials so that teachers have better talking parent points to talk with parents about as well. So we know that's a concern, and I think curriculum associates as well as our math teachers are doing their very best to communicate clearly with parents what it is that students are expected to know and be able to do at each of those math levels.
Well, I have a couple of questions for you, if you may. I can see that an outstanding job is made to make sure that the curriculum aligns with the state standards. But now let's look at academic performance, that aspect. When we look at Ready Math and going out and look at the PEACE performance for the middle schools within the district, scores are not so great, and some are better than others. But how does Ready Math, that curriculum that you have chosen, set aside how it fits with state standards? How does Ready Math address the curriculum, or address the issue of the middle school test score? What performance objective are you looking to see by implementing this curriculum to that situation?
I want to answer this in maybe might be a long roundabout way, but I want to start with, I will tell you, nobody thinks that a program is going to be the end-all be-all answer to our problems with math. I know you don't, none of us do. So we've really invested time and energy and money into professional development with our teachers. We've hired a national math consultant. We've been working, last year we worked with the blended fellowship with all math teachers, all middle school math teachers. We know that we did not do a good enough job when the standards changed back in 2012 of doing some deep professional development with teachers. Standards changed. A big focus that changed is that the second, fourth, and sixth grade years are more conceptual. The standards are more around concepts than just procedures. And to be honest, our math consultant went to every classroom, every middle school classroom, and said, we're really teaching sixth grade math like seventh grade math. We're not teaching what the actual standards are. So we knew we had to go back and do that work with our teachers. It's been well received. Teachers have, I mean, I can't speak for every teacher, but the responses we got from teachers is they really appreciated this professional development and they're learning things that they didn't know before. So I think that's really our first start, is we want teachers to understand those standards better, and then select materials that support them. So how these materials do it is that they are in line with the Alaska State standards. So at 6th grade, students are learning conceptual math, a lot more around discourse than was done in the past. So I think it's a combination of more professional development for our teachers, a deeper understanding of the standards, and selecting materials that are then tools that help them achieve those standards.
Okay, thank you. Now the next question here. I see we're using Go Math in the elementary, and now we're moving from Go Math in the middle school to Ready Math? Is that correct? So when we move from Go Math to Ready Math, is there going to be anything lost in the transition? Are they similar and compliant in scope and sequence, or are we having two different products here that we're going to try to align?
I can't tell you if there won't be some gaps. There probably will be, and we're doing our best to identify those so we can point those out to teachers before they start using these materials. And we're working closely with the Curriculum Associates professional. One of the probably most attractive pieces to this publisher is the professional development that's required with it. And our teachers are hungry for that. They want it. So we'll be finding those areas and pointing them out to teachers, coming up with strategies. Like, we have to go back and do a little remediation. But the truth is, Go Math that we're currently using for middle school is different than our elementary program. It was, the elementary Go Math program was actually written around the new standards. It's a new program. It was started in 2012. The middle school Go Math materials say Go Math on them, but they were really brought together from 3 different publishers that HMH absorbed. And our middle school teachers always complained, actually, that it wasn't as coherent as what we did see in our elementary, which was more coherent. Because the actual program, it was pieced together. I mean, I don't know if the company would say that, but that's what we've discovered. And it just wasn't as fluid and coherent. So, again, it required teachers to really understand the standards so they knew what to do with those materials. So we think it's an improvement, and the middle school teachers who voted on these programs, again, it was actually it was 80% who selected this as their top choice. So they're the experts, and we really rely on them to dig in deep to that.
Okay, another question here for you, if you don't mind. Have we trialed Ready Math in any of our buildings in the districts, or have we pulled any data out of other states or other school districts that might be using this program and seeing how well it functioned within their districts?
On the first question, I can't say we really piloted it, although we did send the materials back to schools with the teachers who were on the writing team, about 10 or 12 middle school teachers, and they did try out they had full access to all the online materials, and they had just one set of print materials, and what they were asked to do was find whatever lesson they're on, find a similar lesson in Ready Math. It was that week before Christmas break, and take that week and teach with these materials. So again, that was part of they did that and then gave us their feedback on the program and what they liked about it. We also did quite a bit of outreach to outside districts. I don't have that information with me right now, but specifically with the district in Oregon, we've spoken with the superintendent, with curriculum principals in those districts, and people are very happy with the product.
Thank you. Is there any further questions from the board at this time? Yes, Mr. Pollard.
Maybe the only one here that feels this way, but I'm just trying to find out if there's not a fundamental issue with a program where you're ready to teach kids, but you also have to set up academies to teach the parents. Is that, I mean, how, I guess I just don't understand that one. How does that work? I mean, that's not really philosophical, I'm just asking.
No, when we implemented Go Math, it was really rough. And I think for two reasons. One, the standards did change a lot from the previous standards. They were much more robust. There was gaps then between, what was a second grader moving into third grade, what now is expected in third grade. They weren't introduced to some things. And Go Math was a more progressive math product, and parents didn't know how to help teach it. So we did try to do a series of workshops to be able to help them. Math is quickly, though, it should not be in elementary. It's our hope that, all parents can help kids with math at home. And a fundamental thing is we should never be sending home work. The premise of homework is preparation or practice. We should never be sending home work that kids don't know how to do independently. It's not fair. So that's a problem in the way that we're organizing our instruction. And really the impetus for why some math teachers move to a flip model where kids watch a video at home and then they do the practice of the homework during the school day. That's kind of the philosophy behind it. But at any point in math, parents will drop off and not be able to help their kids as they get older in progression. Like I said, one of the things that we vetted for this math curriculum was the parent-friendly userness. It's a common concern that we've gotten from parents and a really valid concern.
With discussion that's going on, I go back to the fact that if we're lacking parental involvement, but we're not putting forth something that parents can easily do and help, then how are we ever going to be able to, we continue to fall back on the lacking parental involvement. You got to get out of that and break that. And in order to break that, I think, as I stated in the beginning, other types of curriculum, not stamped with the Common Core, was requested. Obviously, that didn't come forth, but we're operating under the precepts that there's a standard in the misunderstanding, fundamental misunderstanding. If it states indeed that the standards themselves did not dictate the curriculum or delivery of content, I think we can look outside of the box and be able to put something forth that meets all things. And so I would put forth are you entertaining motions at this time?
If you have a motion that you should put on the table.
I would put forth a motion to table this and be able to have a better look at the curriculum that's out there that is more based on the Saxon, that would be able to utilize some of the online resources to have a hybrid approach to this. So right now, I would put forth a motion to table.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there has been a motion presented and seconded to table this item. Is there any discussion? Yes, yes, Dr. Rowe.
I believe that we have spent a lot of time on this, and that people have been involved in this for a long time to prepare for this. I believe that you are it's disrespectful to the process and everything to come up with this at this time. I know that you've asked previously, that was asked for previously for other information, and that information may not have come in the form that was wanted, but the information is there. I think that you are, that this to table this disrespects the whole process, disrespects the work that has been done, and I believe that there is a definite need to move forward with this so that the gaps that we do know are there can be addressed, because it was the 6th grade math that needed help, and this is that curriculum that we hope will cover it. It may not, but we hope that it will, and I think that to delay it is not an appropriate or positive thing for our students. I believe that we need to move on. We've discussed this a couple of times now, and I think we need to move on. Thank you.
Member Larson. Member Turner.
So speaking as a father of a 5th grade math student and a 7th grade homeschooled math student that I do the math with, I feel that this is more than adequate material that meets the state standard, and I feel that the argument that we have is a state level argument at this time. We can't solve the state's issue on what standards they tell us we have to do. Until the state is ready to give us more local control, I think it's a moot point.
I need to ask a clarification because we're asking the board to do several things at the same time. So I would ask that you consider maybe dividing the question. K-5 math curriculum has our curriculum, our SOAP and SWEET grants, we went back through it. We're not asking to change the materials. Our writing teams have gone through and identified areas that there may have been gaps. Maybe things were taught late where they, after the testing season, it's very common for probability and statistics to be the last chapter in a book. That ends up being the weakest area that we have in testing often. So some of those things were changed, and the same thing for high school. We are not changing the materials for high school or elementary school. So if you do not approve those, then we will continue to use the old pacing guides that our teachers did not improve based on teaching this for the last 5 years, but we will be using the same materials.
Member Larson.
There's a lot of criteria on our testing issues, but what we got to look at as a school board is the fact that our tests are some of the lowest in the nation. So how do you bring a child up to test well or have adequate knowledge of the material? Yeah, there was gaps on the last one, and I was there to vote on it, and it seemed like a great math curriculum, and it was sold to us, and then boom, there was gaps. And that curriculum hasn't proven to be adequate as far as testing. And I know standardized testing, there's a lot of questions about standardized testing, you know, this and that, and I agree with it, especially since we test a month before school lets out, and we lose, and that's another argument I don't want to get into, but when we have computerized testing, it seems like we could get the test scores back sooner, but we lose all that 3 to 4 weeks of classroom education that could be utilized when a kid comes up to test. So I think this is a very healthy conversation. In order to go forward, a little bit more information wouldn't hurt to assure us, or at least give us a little bit more confidence in this material or a hybrid material. Because once we vote on this, then we can't switch it in the middle of the river, and we want at least some knowledge and some effort that this will bring up test scores. Right now, I don't know how many times I've been told, why should we give you more money on the BSA when you don't give us results? Now, I don't know how to get those results. I think it's the curriculum. It's not obviously the teachers. The teachers are there supervised by principals, and they're supervised their classroom abilities, and the ones that don't have the abilities are oftentimes worked with. So is it the curriculum that's causing these low test scores? We've been given the challenge of bringing these test scores up. Is it the curriculum? I wouldn't mind tabling this, but not tabling it indefinitely. We've got to be able to table it for, I don't know, even a month or so, just a month, to take a look and give us some more confidence in this material that is going to actually give us the results we want. And right now, maybe it's because of my own fault, I don't have the confidence in it. And and I don't have the confidence in much of anything of these test scores going up. We're all here for one reason, and that's what it says on my desk. Is it good for children? We've got to educate children, so when they get out in the workforce, they have the education necessary to do well in school. And with media, and I'm talking about everything from your cell phone to games to YouTube and everything else is now, and here's a philosophical, I apologize, is really interfering with home life education. But I would like to make sure that the material we're sending home, the parents can utilize and help with those kids. I know we don't send homework home, but there's a bunch of parents out there that want to ensure that their kids have that advantage, and they need the material to be able to do it. So it's a good discussion, and we have a really sound, hard position to bring these test scores up and educate our children. That's what we've been excited with. That's why we're sitting here, and we have to do that. So I don't mind tabling. I don't want to table indefinitely. If we're going to table this, we're going to come up with a solution one way or another to the curriculum and to what we're looking for, and to have some confidence in. Thank you.
Mr. Hart.
Yeah, I just want to address a couple of concerns that were brought up by...
Is this about the motion that's on for table?
It is regarding. As far as the discussion that we're disrespecting the process, I think spending $1 million and voting for something that we're not positive is going to work, that's kind of disrespectful to the taxpayers. And we were elected for a particular purpose to do our due diligence, and this is electronic. I don't think there's a delay in printing. The time delay we need to worry about, I think they'll be able to, send it to us digitally just fine. I think tabling it is a prudent action. And if you've got a board that's split on this and they're not convinced, or they're looking at it in a particular way with suspicion that this is just yet another wolf in sheep's clothing that's going to come in here and keep our kids from performing. And so we need to be convinced. The marketing stuff they send parents, that's wonderful. I'm glad they send videos to the parents to keep them sold on this. But frankly, we bear that responsibility. In discussions with Dee, we found out that the board, the district, we have the responsibility to select the curriculum and to set our goals. So we have that duty, have that responsibility. Please, let's make this happen. Table it for now, and then in the meantime, hopefully we can get some presentations on this, perhaps, to tell us what the difference is between this Common Core curriculum and the previous Common Core curriculum that didn't do so hot.
Okay, Dr. Blair.
Yeah, I'd like to make two really clarifications. There is no doubt that we need to do a better job in mathematics. However, for the last 2 years, on the state PEACE assessment, we have been the highest of the Big Five. I am not saying that because that's good enough. I'm saying that because we used to not be the highest of the Big Five. We used to be one of the bottom, year after year after year. So our students are performing better in math 2 years in a row than Anchorage, Kenai, Juneau, and Fairbanks. The other point that I want to make is there is no magic program out there. If we could find it, we would. And I want to give a perfect example for that. One of my charges when I came in, the elementary school had 2 different math curriculums. Half of our elementary schools did Saxon, a very traditional math program. Half of our schools did another progressive program. It was math expressions. When we looked at the data for their schools, there was examples of excellence and examples of really poor performance in both programs. So really, the most critical factor in math performance is the efficacy of our teachers. So we cannot guarantee you that this program is going to radically increase test scores. But we have gone through the vetted process. a process that is outlined in board policy. We're happy to do a work session if you want that. But I would want direction from the board. Do you want to learn more about the materials and the curriculum that we're bringing forward after we've gone through the process that you outlined, including stakeholders? Or do you want us to restart the process? And we're not simply just going to pick materials off the shelf and say, here's a program. We have to go back through that entire process. That's what's outlined in board policy.
Mr. Taylor.
Well, thank Member Pond for bringing up some of the questions he did. I came into this tonight a little bit nervous about making this vote because of the lack of knowledge of having this program, the lack of knowledge of having a Common Core. I see a dollar figure here, $700,000 for the 6th through 8th materials. That strikes a chord in me, and that we need to be responsible for that spending to increase our scores. I really do support the opportunity to table this for a short period for a couple of reasons. One, I would like to go out and talk to the people in my district, parents and teachers, and receive their opinions and their views. And so have the opportunity to spend the time out there getting to know from them that I could before being asked to make this vote on something so critical. I think that our parents need to be more involved and somehow being out there asking them to do that and let them give me their opinion if they won't come here and do it. I would like the opportunity to go out there. So the table, this is something I'm in favor of. Thank you.
Member Webb.
First up, there was a survey sent out to parents. I know because I have a student who was in the 4th grade, and it was sent to 4th grade parents, and I know that from my son. And so it was surveyed. The material sat in this room and could be looked at by any one of us. And I spent a good hour going through the different materials so that I had opportunity to look at both of those. As a board, our job is not to be minutely involved in every single aspect of the district. We are to know whether the process was followed. We have been presented and shown that the process was followed. It is not to minutely tell you exactly how to do everything. This is a board process. It is to read and know that a process has been followed and the people who were tasked with the job did the job. Right now you are saying they did not do the job, and that hurts. I think that hurts all of the district itself. The surveys were done. People were asked. I spent time. If you did not spend the time to go through those books and look at the videos, then that's on you. That's all I have to say.
Member Trimmer.
I'd already raised my hand. That was a lot of what I had to say. Was we've had 2 weeks to look at this. We have Google in these days that we can search things for the last 2 weeks. We've in the past with board, we've never had this issue because it's part of the board's job to go do their own research. It's not the administration's job to do all the research for the board. And if you came on this board expecting that, you're in the wrong place.
Member Ponder.
I think there's a few things that deserve being addressed. First and foremost, board policy. Board policy dictates that it is the role of the school board to overview and look at the curriculum, right? So we have a huge charge in that. 2 weeks ago, there was a request for other opportunities and other curriculum that might be out there that could be presented, and it never came. 3, Department of Education, their website states, it is a district decision how to design course offerings covering the mathematics standards. So we can go back to all of the different arguments of whether it's a state, whether there was enough time, or whether there wasn't enough time. There was requests put in, and those requests that never came forth. And so, again, I put by motion to table this so that if curriculum was chosen in a means and manner with the understanding that Common Core had to be what was presented to this board, but there's all kinds of things out there that the Department of Education puts forth saying it's the district's decision how you design the course, and these standards don't dictate curriculum. Let's look at it from that perspective with our eyes wide open.
Okay, is there any more discussion? Seeing none, it is now time to vote.
Would you clarify what we're voting on, please?
We are voting for the motion to table item A, K-8 math, algebra 1 and algebra 2, and geometry curriculum.
We need a time certain or it is dead.
So is that an amendment to the motion?
The motion has to have the time certain, whatever date it is, or you are asking for it to just die.
Okay.
So that's just a point of clarification, or is that subjective? Are you saying that that's your opinion on it, or is that?
No, that's Robert's rules.
May I put out that we could do a work session on April 1st. I would prefer not to do it the following school board meeting. We will not, because spring break and many people are gone, and I want to make sure that we can do our due diligence. I would request that if you put this off, that you let, that it's really clear what our direction is on what you want presented. And then we could present it on April 1st in a work session, and then that could come up back up for vote on April 15th.
Yes, Ms. Palmer.
Are we not having a school board meeting on the 18th?
We are having a school board meeting, but next week is spring break, so many staff are not going to be working. We can certainly, I'm happy to present it then, but we'll have 4 business days to present, prepared.
I totally understand. Perhaps we can have a work session to discuss, and then something then to be brought forth on first.
So we bring forth, do we need to amend the motion to have the vote?
I would amend the motion to extend this time certain to the 15th of April and let the timeline work itself out. So you've got an end date, let the rest of it, whenever we're going to have a work session and what dates we're going to have a work session, work itself out. And just extend it to the April 15th, I believe, and let the rest of the stuff work out as we go along.
Second. Do you want to amend your motion, Mr. Palmer?
Please put forth a motion to amend it to that, and I'm seconding.
Amending and then. So is there any discussion on the amendment to the motion? Seeing none, do I need to reread the motion as amended before we vote?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. The motion presented is to table item A, K-8 math, algebra 1 and algebra 2, and geometry curriculum until the April 15th general board meeting. Okay, let's vote. And the motion passes. Okay, and now we're going to take a 10-minute break. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
See if we can get some resolution. That's okay, it's, this is just as
Perfect, yes. So email me the contact information, then Rod. And I have it, right, and I have it my job title, so I think she's
I figured
Table it for a later date.
Oh, okay.
On the first one, where you're absolutely right, they're not allowed
So we could direct them to the input items to that item was the
Let me see if I can bring a comment when we first get it in, if we move on to the next one.
Public comment is a great area because it's supposed to be non-agenda items. Right. And technically, I can't remember, I'm not supposed to participate. Because I did it.
You didn't get a new, is this your, this is a camera, phone? You don't have a new camera?
The one I want doesn't exist.
Really? Maybe you better design it.
This is really close, other than I would have to pay for the service.
Well, what is it, iPhone?
This is the latest
iPhone 11?
Yeah. I mean, it's better than most of the cameras they produce out there nowadays anyways.
Yeah, and it's way less expensive.
my monthly plan.
Yeah? And you got to use the money for something else.
Actually, no, I'm still holding on to it. I did find a camera that I want out there that can do the multi-streaming, but it's about $3,000 more than what my other one was, so.
So you gotta start saving your pennies.
I just socked it away.
Like your shirt, where'd you get that?
I can't remember.
You know what?
I think it was at the parade out here in Palmer.
Did we talk about the design of the recall and the keep them moving?
I brought that.
Did you bring it to somebody?
I brought that up with Dave Stern and Governor Dunleavy at the town hall. Dave Stern acknowledged it wholeheartedly, and hopefully they will do something about the colors.
But you know what?
That's kind of out of his. That's kind of out of his control.
Right. If it doesn't make it on the ballot, it's a moot point.
Yeah.
But if it makes it on the ballot, I think that's why, some people are saying, well, they should be more active and they should be doing this and they should have the clothing and blah, blah, and maybe the reason they don't is because they're waiting to see if it makes it on the ballot. And then if it does, then they'll hit the ground running.
They're waiting for the Supreme Court decision.
That's what I know.
Because until that happens,
but the Supreme Court decision,
it's pretty much a given.
Yeah, and the signature gathering already started.
Yeah, the Supreme Court wouldn't allow them to start getting signatures or went through the cost of printing the booklets if they weren't already planning on ruling on it to begin with.
That's what I figured, but we'll see.
The way the judicial court or the Superior Court ruled on it versus the Supreme, the Superior Court basically said your feelings are more important than actually having laws broken.
Right.
And the judge was very, very clear about that when he made his final remarks that day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Stupid.
I can't understand it. Why when do feelings start outweighing facts and evidence and all this other good stuff?
Feelings, nothing more than feelings.
Yep.
We're not being recorded, are we?
We haven't stopped.
Oh, really? And I was just singing.
Yeah, we were going.
I was just singing.
Yeah.
We're live?
We've been live, yeah.
Oh, no.
I'm not going to stop this feed.
Well, hello, people. So glad you're joining us, all 20 of you.
I am. Well, it was doing a lot better than that here a little bit ago.
Well, it'll start up again probably.
Have you seen the newest bill yet?
The one that came out today with the $900?
Oh, the HB 306 is to cap our PFD with the budget.
Yes, and there's a really good Mexican restaurant that
Yep, HCR 13 was that was the ground floor for the House that they just got done passing, the House current resolution.
Oh, the budget.
No, this is for the PFD only, turning our PFD into tax revenue by forcing it directly into the UGF. Now that they've passed that through the House, and they got the votes that they needed for that, now HB 306 that this is right here, this is the companion bill to that.
Okay, can we get board members back? Let's. Okay, it was brought to my attention that on item A, public comments, during a portion of it was missed. So we are going to suspend the rules and allow for public discussion on item A to proceed. And then as soon as discussion is done, we're going to put the rules back in place and proceed on with the meeting. Yeah. As of, is there any public comment on action item A? Yes, Eugene.
This one, what question? My name is Eugene Calhaven. I represent myself. I follow the public process. When the public process is appropriate, decision made by the governing body is more likely public interest. I'll be more appreciate what Michelle shared this with and the agreement by the members of the board. Standard is that when you have action and non-action items, you need to have, this is for clarification for the public that may not have captured that, thank you, is that there's a place for public comment. And you took action in a situation where there was no public comment. You're allowing it now, and then take very good correction. But I would also like to remind you that you did a vote, even moving on to another day, so that the action is you need to revote that decision after public comment, which you are doing right now. You cannot just take public comment and then go on to the next issue. You need to revote that decision. You don't have to discuss the whole thing until like we did before because it was a public session, but you need to revote that decision as you just did after your public comment. And I appreciate what you've done. Thank you very much with respect.
Ms. Rutherford.
Yes, my name is Debbie Redford, and before I spoke a little bit about what I thought was some virus hysteria, and now I'm going to speak to common cold hysteria, which I've been hearing for a decade. So I have been a banker for 20 years, a personal consumer banker. Math is my thing. I've been a bookkeeper for 20 years in my own business since then, and I can't even tell you how many adults I talked to balance the checkbook because they didn't know basic math. I've been able to help my own son break through Algebra 2. In the beginning, when he was in elementary school, some of it was presented in a different manner than I learned it, but I read the chapter and went, oh, okay, I kind of get what they're doing here. And, you know, this thought that we need to, if it's not the way we learned it 50 years ago, then that's not right, is ridiculous. So we're going to go back to teaching science and technology the way we learned it 50 years ago. Things evolved, and this more rigorous math curriculum was put in place for a reason, to move our nation ahead in math, and it has been working. It has not been in place very long, but it has been working. It is a rigorous math curriculum, much more rigorous than we had when we were children, trust me. And I would think we need to dumb it down, I'm sorry to use that term, so that every parent can understand it. If the parent wants to understand it, then they can put forth the effort to understand it. The whole point of increasing the rigorousness of this curriculum is so that our students are better than we were when they get to be our age at math, so that they have a deeper understanding of it. And I think we need to trust the professionals, the people with doctorates, the people who have studied teaching methodology, because I believe it is working. And to question, just because of some label that's been put on it, the point is, does it meet our Alaska standards? The Alaska standards were put in place the same way the Common Core ones were, with a broad array of stakeholders coming together and deciding what our students need to know and how to step it up a notch, because we were behind the rest of the world. And we have done that, we've stepped it up a notch. And so now we need to give the teachers the tools and resources that they need to follow through with that and to meet those standards with our students. And by you delaying it for this discussion, as Member Welton said, the curriculum was here for you to look at. You could have looked at it. The process was followed, it's good curriculum, and the teachers need it. And I can tell you what we need to raise those standards, Member Larson. We need to address class sizes, and we need to, as a community, address family hardship, poverty, and dysfunction. That's what we need to do, not necessarily change to some other type of teaching material that meets, that doesn't have a label on it that someone doesn't like.
Thank you, Ms. Ms. McCabe.
My name is Kevin McCabe. not as highly educated as some of you probably have an MBA and a Pro Aero Bachelor of Science degree. Went to a school that was built in 1920. It's a Downey Board school. It's still churning out 465 students a year, the 90th percentile or above in math and English, and they'll use Common Core. So I'm going to disagree with Ms. Rutherford. Common Core, frankly, is not for us. You can look at the Matsu Borough rankings of your students, math below 42%, English below 45%, and it's horrible. The state standards are a minimum standard. Doesn't mean you can't go above them. And if you are looking at nothing but Common Core, you're making a huge mistake. Frankly, I'm tired of school boards and school districts experimenting on our kids. Get back to the basics. Learn the basics. I learned the basics. I fly jet airplane worldwide. You guys, you just have to stop using our children as an experiment for some new program that some highly educated person has decided is going to somehow increase our learning. We need to get back to the basics. We need to get our percentile. It doesn't matter about the poverty level of the students. I went through the same thing. Same thing in high school. Doesn't matter about the family situation. Dr. Goyette, you mentioned something about the efficacy of teachers. Really? Is that what you think of your teachers, that they're not able to teach these kids? Or maybe you don't have the tools. They don't have the right tools to teach the kids. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Callie Ponder, and I am grateful to address the board this time. I've had a lot of time in the past 6 years to think about Common Core and how it's affected my student that's currently in the school district, and I have another 4 on the way into the school district. So I speak to you not just as a parent, but also as a former educator in the Matsu School District. I also graduated from the Matsu School District at the top of my class. And so when I say, and when I hear that parents need classes to be able to help their kids with this, with Go Math, with Common Core Math, I find that that is completely missing what the real issues are with Common Core. Parents don't need classes to understand this math. In my experience and in my opinion, as a science educator, where I use math a lot in science education, that this Go Math that we have been using for the past 6 years, so my experience is in elementary with this program, is that it's very cumbersome math. It is also very poorly written. A lot of the word problems are not even, they don't even have correct grammar. So that's been my experience as I've helped my doctoral homework, and yes, I do understand it, but are the problems, I mean, they're not written well. It's very frustrating as a parent to see that that is what your kids are trying to work through, in addition to more difficult ways of learning something that can be taught much easier. So I do not think it's just a philosophical problem or just a political problem, although I do think it is also a political problem. I think there's some issues that need to be discussed on those levels, but it's a practical problem as well, coming from somebody who has worked through these textbooks for the past 6 years. And so those are the things that I think need to be addressed. We're talking about spending taxpayer dollars. These programs have to be helping kids, and I just struggle when I see that there is a harder way being taught to kids of doing something that can be so much easier. It's just super frustrating as an educator and as a parent. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
My name is Mike Alexander, Big Lake, and I would like to remind you that the old math did take us to the moon. And that's certainly something you have to be able to use common math every day in your life. My math score is always, old as I am, they're about C's. I would catch on, I'd go over with it. But my grandparents and my parents could help me with my math. And these test scores, we had about, like Mr. McKay said, we had about the same amount. We had 90% proficiency. And none of us, we had some really smart kids that, like me, was an average C guy. But we could all do our math. we can all read. And that's what we want out of it. We don't mind spending the money, but we want some performance for the money. When kids test that low, you've got a problem. I'd say a lot of it is probably curriculum. But this, I've seen some of these people talk, what's the way it works in common math? And I'm like, my God, I can do that in my head. It's like, you know, I'm like, this is crazy. And this looks like it's really involved, and this is the point, like when I went to nursing school back then, when I was about 40, to do an IV drip, they had a formula that's about this long. You can do that stuff in your head and have it figured out. But it's just that, it's kind of like an avoidance or a fear of math. I don't know what it is, but it needs to be a lot simpler. And this program doesn't sound like it addresses those problems. Your scores in the last 6 years don't relate that you've done anything magnificently wonderful to keep those scores going up. They should come up quite a bit if the program is what it wants. And that, about my 2 cents on it. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Is there anyone else at this time that wishes to approach the bench? Seeing none, discussion is closed. Dr. Well, could we have a ruling on the request to re-vote on the one issue?
We had a suspension of the rules, and that's what we covered, was the suspension of the rules. And you stated at the beginning that we would go back to the agenda, and that is where we will go. If that is appropriate for everybody here, I believe that is the way it's supposed to be.
Thank you. Moving on to item B, new course approval, advanced placement capstone. Is there a motion and a second?
I move new course approval, advanced placement capstone.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Do we have an admin report?
No further information to provide.
At this time, is there any public comment concerning action item B? Seeing none, is there any board discussion at this time? Seeing none, it is now time to vote. And that motion passes unanimously. New course approval, advanced placement capstone is approved. Moving on to item C, resolution 20-011, support of evidence-based literacy policies and practices, Senate Bill 6. Is there a motion?
I move resolution 20-011, support of evidence-based literacy policies and practices, Senate Bill 6.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been brought forth and seconded. Is there an admin report?
This resolution was requested by a board member. This is a legislative priority of the board. The resolution mirrors the legislative priority exactly. There was additional questions. One was about the reading requirements of 3 credits for reading teachers. In reading the act, my interpretation, my understanding is that it used you for initial certification for elementary teachers required 3 credits of reading, the equivalent of coursework, training, or testing requirements in evidence-based reading instruction, and now that is just a common standard for elementary teachers. There was also a question about the fiscal notes that were attached to Senate Bill 6. There are 5 fiscal notes. Fiscal Note 1 and Fiscal Note 5 are the same, and 4, so I'll really kind of address them, and I'll start with Fiscal Note 4. Fiscal Note 4 is approximately 51 million, and that is the grant program to stand up high-quality preschools. And so in each year, there's a different cohort. Our district would not qualify based on how we perform for at least until fiscal year 26, 27, or 28. Once those schools qualify for a high-quality preschool, then they can move from the grant into the ADM. And that's what fiscal note 1 and fiscal note 5 address, is what the expected ADM cost is going to be. Our preschools would qualify, we believe, right now for the ADM. We have over 400 students in federal program preschools that are not counted as a 0.5 of the BSA. Our special ed programs are. And so that is money that would come in. And then fiscal note 2 addresses school improvement literacy grant. That is, and the comprehensive reading intervention program together, those are almost 35 million, the fiscal note. The district did receive a $1.4 million literacy grant in piloting materials that we're going to be piloting at Meadow Lakes and Houston, junior, senior high. There's also administrators at the dean level and reading specialists. And then the final fiscal note is early learning coordination. And that's $2 million. From the understanding that I have, that is probably the coordination of those preschool grants.
Thank you, Dr. Goyette. At this time, is there any public comment on this action item? Yes, Mr. President.
Resolution 20-011, right?
Correct.
My name is Eugene Carl Haber, and I live in the Matsu Valley. Follow public process, and the public process done appropriately, decision made by the governing bodies providing the public interest. I'll be speaking on this item here before you. Number one, it makes reference to Senate Bill 6. I would wonder how many people read Senate Bill 6. In the enclosures, there is no enclosure against Senate Bill 6. There's no attachments, no nothing. Now, I did do, while the meeting was going on, I went to the legislative site on bills. I pulled something out there that had some identity on that. And what I saw something like, it said substitute, but I don't see Senate Bill 6 itself, but Senate Bill 6 substitute. So I don't know what's going on, but the fact is, you're approving a resolution on the issue. One would think you would have a document of that bill that you were supporting or not supporting. And there would be dialogue on that for the public to be able to see that document, and that document's not yours. But on a positive note, I'd like to compliment you for having a setup in which you introduce resolutions on legislation that are going for the legislature. You're allowing for an action and non-action scenario in this public comment. I don't see that happening in the English Assembly, and I'm glad to see it here. They pass resolutions, they don't even have introductions, they don't have explanations, they just go with it, and there's no place for public comment. But thank you for what you're doing in that aspect. It's a great improvement towards the Anchorage, but the fact still is a problem. The failure to have that particular document, that particular bill, to be able to be in front of you and the public, I would caution you to prove this, the failure of not having that document, so you know what you're really addressing. Thank you very much, with respect, and with 52 seconds to spare.
Is there anyone else who wishes to approach on this topic? Seeing none, we will now move on to board discussion. Seeing, is there anyone? Yes, Mr. Potter.
With those fiscal notes, how does that have any fiscal impact to the school district?
Those fiscal notes are money that would be disseminated through deed through the school district. As a clarification, are you asking if maybe the bill itself has requirements that would create a fiscal?
In part, yes, but there's always a cost on the fiscal note, so if any of the costs from the fiscal notes, any of the 5 would have an impact, does the bill itself have any fiscal impact on the school district?
So two parts. So money would come to the school district primarily through the ADM of preschool. We did get $1.4 million in a literacy grant, but a lot of the services will be targeted towards the lowest performing districts, of which the Matsu would not be one. In terms of requirements in the bill that create a fiscal note, absolutely. The response to intervention are multi-tiered systems of support. Cost money, we have instructional coaches in all of our schools. We have early literacy screening through AIMSweb and MAP. Those cost money. We buy curriculum that's aligned with our tier 2 and tier 3, but those are already things that we are choosing to implement. I don't believe that there's anything in the bill that we are already doing, with the exception of the retention discussion around 3rd grade. And even in that scenario, even though a student would be with us for 1 year longer, we would get revenue from the state on that. So I don't believe that there's anything in that bill that would add additional costs that are not existing to the district already in the way that we choose to spend our money.
So there's nothing in the bill that we would be required to do that we're not already doing?
The early literacy screening, in the past there was a layer in there, phoneme segmentation, that we did not choose to do, but that was paid for then by the state. And so that actually would save us money if the state picked that early literacy screening back up. We spend, I can put in the Board Connect what we spend on AIMSweb every year, our pre-K 3 screening. So I think that we would actually get additional revenue for that.
Any further board discussion? When we're ready to vote. And item C, resolution 20-011, support of evidence-based literacy policies and practices, Senate Bill 6, passes unanimously. Moving on to item 8, non-action items. A, FY21 meal price increases. Is there an administrative report?
Yes, it's my pleasure to hand it over to Luke Volk, our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services.
Thank you, Dr. Goyette, President Berge, and members of the school board. It's my pleasure to present this evening non-action item FY21 meal price increases. I just want to provide some explanation for this fairly routine process in which we evaluate what the cost for paid meals are within our food nutrition program and adjustments that come before the board for approval. School fund authorities, as designated by the USDA, are participating in the National School Lunch Program are required to ensure sufficient funds are provided to the nonprofit school food service account for meals served to students not eligible for free or reduced price meals. So that would be our paid meal status. These are for students who do not meet our income eligibility requirements, or the USDA's income eligibility requirements rather, for free or reduced status in which the meal is provided at no cost to that family. So these are for paid meals, and the two ways that we qualify to meet the paid lunch equity policy that's set forth by the USDA is to comply with their rate for what prices should be for charged paid meals, or provide other non-federal sources to the nonprofit school food service account, which we currently do. We are transferring funds from our general operating fund to our nutrition service fund, and that's how we're meeting this requirement currently. If we were not doing so, then we are required to comply with this, and I'll get into a little bit of detail about what that requirement is in just a minute. Within Section 205 of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act, there are specific guidance to increasing meal prices. The law states that school nutrition programs will be required to move towards charging paid meal categories students at a price that is on average equal to the difference between the field-free meal reimbursement and the paid meal reimbursement. Schools that charge less than this amount are required to gradually increase their prices over time until they meet this requirement. So there's no set standard for how much we have to increase year to year, but it is a requirement that we move towards the rate. And the rate, as we calculate it, and it's identified within the memo that's before you, is $5.01, and that's currently using our current rates through the USDA. On average, our average lunch price between elementary and secondary is $4.25. So the idea is that we adjust our meal prices up to get closer to that $5 mark. And the reasoning is the USDA provides the majority of our revenue to our food service account. They want to ensure that that revenue is going to fund the reimbursable meals that are reimbursable under free or reduced price lunches. So for those families that meet the income eligibility guidance, and this is the USDA's way of making sure that their reimbursement is not subsidizing paid meals, those meals that where families aren't able to afford the meals and don't meet those income eligibility requirements. So in short, the last time the school board adjusted meal prices was March 2017. This proposed meal price adjustment will provide an estimated $107,000 of new revenue to the Nutrition Services Fund, allowing the district to preserve essential resources in the general fund. With this meal price increase, the projected transfer is estimated to be $97,000 for FY21, and we presented in the memo a 10-year history of transfers from the general fund to support the food service operation, and you can see that over the last 4 years we've been reducing this transfer, so demonstrating progress towards a self-supporting nutrition services fund, which is a good thing for the district. In terms of the meal price adjustment, we're looking at 25 cents across the board for all meals. That's breakfast and lunch at both elementary and middle school. And the reason why we propose to do this perhaps every other year or every 2 or 3 years and adjust by 25 cents rather than 10 or 5 or 15 cents is simply for the convenience of making change for families who pay with cash. So that's the administrative report. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have at this time.
Ms. Palmer?
Just one, where does the revenue for this fall into?
The revenue category for paid meals goes directly into the food service fund. This is a good question, and something I failed to mention. It goes directly into the food service fund. It's categorized as other local sources within the food service fund. So the food service fund, the majority of revenue comes from federal sources, and that's because of our monthly claims that we submit to the state for the number of reimbursable meals we serve, and we get reimbursed through the feds for those meals. So the majority of funds are federal through state. This happens to be the local sources where students are actually paying for the meal directly to the school district. And with that additional revenue, it reduces the fund's reliance on the general fund for the transfer. And that's what we mean by self-supporting.
And I might make this, but the food's not increasing in cost. It's just being able to make a change and getting
through the chair, that is primarily one of the drivers for why the USDA has this policy, is they do cost studies on what the cost of food is for different school food authorities or districts across the country, and they look at over time what do school food authorities or districts, they refer to as school food authorities, what is the cost that they now need to charge as a result of increasing meal costs? And so over time, they look to us to make these adjustments.
Member Larson?
Most of the people that pay for meal, is that done online?
Yes, through the chair, most of it is done through School Cafe is the portal that we use to collect these.
Yeah. So there's very little cash.
I would.
I'm proportionate, I mean.
There's less than there used to be, and we are certainly encouraging more online sales. We recently eliminated the convenience fee that was built into the program so that we could encourage more online sales and didn't apply the 2 to 3% increase that would be passed on to the customer. And so that was something that we deliberately did, I believe, 4 years ago to try to encourage less cash in schools. And so as a control mechanism, it's something that helps us with cash handling procedures. We are encouraging more and more online activity and credit card payments.
Thank you, Mr. Paul.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment concerning this non-action item? Seeing none, is there any further board discussion concerning this action item? Seeing none, moving on to item B, Resolution 20-012, FY21 preliminary budget and local funding request. Dr. Gwynn, do we have administrative report?
Yes, again, it's my pleasure to ask Assistant Superintendent to present.
Thank you. The presentation tonight is taking the budget, the preliminary rollover budget that we presented to the school board that was, I want to clarify, not strictly a rollover, adjusted budget to meet the enrollment projection that we have for FY21, and I say that because we adjusted it for personnel and for costs related to next year's activity. We're taking those numbers for projected expenses and we're now balancing that budget so that we can transmit it to the borough and meet borough code for transmitting a balanced budget to the borough by the end of March with a funding request for local funding. So that is part of borough code and something that's required of the board is to transmit that by April 1st. And so we have 2 meetings in March set up for the borough to review, the school board to review a balanced budget and consider it and potentially adopt this. And then after the second meeting in March, we will put a packet together and transmit that document, meet all the requirements that the borough set before us. So for tonight's presentation, it will be a little bit more brief than the last budget presentation you had. The first one we do in February is really more comprehensive overview of everything that we're expecting. Now we want to focus on, from the presentation you had last month and the open house material that we presented to the community, the budget surveys we collected back from the community. Now these are administration's recommendations around getting to a balanced budget. The good thing this year is it required a fairly minor adjustment to both expense and revenue to get to that balanced budget. So we'll just work through the material here. We're going to go over the calendar or cover the summary of adjustments, both in narrative form and in a budget summary. And then we'll just highlight briefly the revenue and expense changes that we've made and answer any questions the board may have. So as we discussed, we are in March. We're looking to adopt a preliminary balanced budget and transmit that to the borough before April 1st. In April, the legislature is scheduled to adjourn. However, we're looking at the prospect of extended sessions for the legislature. Within 30 days of transmitting our local funding request to the borough, Alaska statute requires that the borough set a minimum amount to be made available for the district. We covered what that minimum amount was, I believe to the tune of $33 million. So within 30 days of transmitting our request to the borough, they have to say that that minimum funding required local contribution is going to be made available to the district. So that's why we highlighted that there. It really won't be until May that they determine the full amount of funding for the district. And as I'm walking through this, I'm thinking about prior years, they've already told us what they intend to give us, and they told us that at the beginning of February. So that is a good thing in terms of just that unknown that and that unpredictability that we used to experience with what the borough deliberations typically would be. Nonetheless, they will adopt the full amount when they adopt their budget in May. So that's something that will become official at that time. Once we have all of the information from the legislative session and we have that final adopted budget from the borough, we'll come back before the school board with any adjustments that we need to make in order to adopt and pass the balanced budget, which is also required by the state of Alaska, and that is due by July 15th. So it's really important that we come back to the board after we've determined all of the revenue sources, and we, again, go through that process of making any adjustments to our expenditures to align with those revenue figures before we leave for the summer. So the summary of adjustments, want to draw your attention to this list here. This is the narrative form of all the adjustments. You can see we wanted to present the numbers in thousands. These are all the adjustments from the preliminary budget as presented on February 5th, 2020. This is adjustments from the open house material and all the material for the budget presentations that was on the website as well. In terms of total revenue adjustments, you can see it's less than 1% when you add up all those different revenue adjustments. It's about 0.92%, and when you look at the expenses, it's, just want to provide this context, we reduce expenses by 1/3 of 1%, so we're making very small changes to the overall operating fund. That stability that the borough really set out is helpful, and it's allowing us to move through this process with more certainty than we've ever had. So what you can see here is we added lottery funds from the permanent fund dividend for the education raffle process that we have now. This is the first year in which we received raffle funds from the state of Alaska. A couple key things that I want to highlight. The PFD now allows $100 donations to public education, and you can buy $100 at a time, and it provides one entry into the raffle. And the first drawing was January 28, 2020. And when the legislature enacted the education raffle, it included language that this will be supplemental and it will not reduce the amount of funding we would otherwise receive from the state of Alaska for education purposes. So 50% of all proceeds go to education. This past year, the state collected $488,000. About $64,000 came to the school district. So we are now budgeting that for next year. This is an adjustment that we're looking forward to including into our budget process from here on out, as long as this raffle is in place. We have Medicaid calculation correction. We have this, it's an accounting adjustment that we did on both sides to align more closely with what is actually occurring. The state actually assumes some of the revenue and assumes some of the cost in how we're doing it. So it's a little bit, you could look at it like the on behalf adjustment. And so we've adjusted both the revenue side and the expense side, and actually doesn't have a negative impact on the budget. It's just one put that there for completeness. And then we have use of fund balance. That's the largest adjustment that we're making to revenue at this time of $2.5 million. That is what administration is recommending in terms of use of fund balance to balance this budget. On the expense side, you can see CEA negotiated agreement has been incorporated into the budget. We reduced 5 whole teachers from the budget. Those are unfilled positions that we move into the following school year with. They help us with any enrollment bubbles and issues at the start of the school year with incoming enrollment that we didn't anticipate at specific school sites. We still have 5 full teachers within the budget, and moving into this current budget, we had 5 full teachers as well, and we fared well with that process by making sure we met school needs in the spring as best we could and projecting those needs. Charter school revenue adjustments led to slight adjustments to their expenditures as well. That was their portion of the lottery funds, but also cleaning up their local appropriation and what they could expect out of that. So those were some minor adjustments we did there. We did a district-wide reduction of non-personnel site-based budgets to the tune of 3.3%. That saved the district $427,000. The Medicaid calculation, which we spoke about above, This is the offsetting expense portion, $490,000 savings to the expense side. And then the adjustments that we had to do to the transportation and food service subsidy. The food service subsidy includes that concept of increasing the meal price, which was the non-action item before you tonight. If that's adopted by the board, that's also included into this recommendation by administration. And we were able to reduce, even with the CEA cost built, CEA negotiated agreement cost built into food service and transportation, we were able to reduce those subsidies by $7,000 because of the meal price adjustment. So this is the summary view of, the budget summary view of those adjustments. You can see from left to right, we're looking at our current budget that we're operating under in FY20. We had our initial budget that was presented to the board in February, which is FY 2021 initial budget. And then you can see what the preliminary budget is, or preliminary balanced budget that we're presenting tonight in terms of a recommendation. At the bottom, I just want to draw your attention to that deficit row. You can see that the previous budget had a deficit of $2.9 million. And with this recommended budget package, you're looking at a balanced budget, so there's no deficit or excess amount. Again, we added the permanent fund dividend lottery funds. We adjusted the Medicaid calculations. We included use of fund balance. We adjusted salaries for the CEA agreement. Twin Bridge charter staffing made some changes. Those were allowable changes by the charter, and they were within their allotted funds, so there's no net impact to the budget. We did remove 5 full teachers as well. That impacted salaries and benefits. And then non-personnel, we made that reduction of 3.3% to non-personnel, and also the expense side of the Medicaid adjustment. And then finally, transfers to other funds, which impacts the pupil transportation fund and the food service fund. We built in the CEA agreement costs for those 2 funds, which are made up of CEA personnel. And then we also adjusted it for the meal price increase, assuming that the board adopts that proposal. This is the revenue breakdown. The pie chart on the left represents all revenue sources, less use of fund balance. So use of fund balance is included in the $237 million, but it's not included in terms of the revenue source because it is different than the recurring revenue that we receive from the borough, the state, and the federal government. It is technically not revenue. It's fund balance is a reserve that the district holds, so that's why it's highlighted. On these assumptions, we don't want to restate everything that we prepared and presented to the board in February, but we did want to highlight the changes. So you can see in state funding, we bolded the inclusion of the PFD lottery, and we bolded the item, the last item includes $2.5 million in use of fund balance. So those are the only changes from the budget in February. And then on the expense side, we wanted to present the same overview. You can see it's a balanced budget, $237 million of expenses, and the categories listed on the left is the pie chart representing all of the breakdown in expenditures. 83% of salaries and benefits is the major portion there. On the expense assumptions, while the 1.5% increase to MSPA was already built into the budget, we did bold that line and we added CEA to that line, so that's why we bolded it. We also changed the line, the last bullet point includes 5 full teachers. It previously stated includes 10 full teachers. We made no changes to personnel benefits within this budget iteration, and it simply represents the benefits as a result of the percentage of the salaries. And then on the non-personnel items, we did reduce school site non-personnel budgets by 3.3% with any increase or decrease from the current year due to enrollment. And then department non-personnel budgets were reduced by 3.3% as well. We did not reduce utility line items, we did not reduce insurance line items, and then we made adjustments, albeit very minor, to transfers to other funds, and we want to represent those amounts there as well. And the final bullet point, just to remind the board, this budget does include the 25-cent increase for both breakfast and lunch, which adds $107,000 of new revenue to the food service fund. And that has an impact on the general fund because less money is required to be transferred at that point. The budget is made still intact in terms of PTR. You can see that concern was raised earlier tonight by a member of the community. You can see that with this balanced budget, we are looking at 3 years of stable pupil to teacher ratios, FY19, 20, and 21. The change that we highlighted for the board on per pupil funding for the non-personnel budgets, this is a result of the 3.3% reduction. You can see on the very furthest right-hand column, it's $115 for high school students, $108 per every middle school student that's allocated, and then 3 through 5 receive $72 per student, as well as K through 2. So we make no distinction on non-personnel costs for elementary students. And I just want to find my note on this. The total amount changing is about a little less than $4 per student for high school students, and then for middle school students it's $3.70 change, and then elementary students it amounts to $2.45 per student, and that's how it impacts the non-personnel budget on a per student basis from what was presented in February. And then we're getting close to the end here. The staffing comparisons, there's very slight changes. The main thing here is that we wanted to highlight them in terms of the only categories that changed from the previous presentation of the budget in February is classroom teachers, and that was for the whole teacher positions, the 5 whole teachers. And then again, Twinley Bridge Charter came in and made some adjustments to their staffing allocations, and that led to adjustments in special education teachers, administrative support, and custodial. Those are all a result of Twinley Bridge making those changes, which are definitely within their purview to make. So we wanted to honor the request and make sure those were built into the budget. This is the second to last slide. We want to remind the board, and always present this when we propose a budget for the board to consider, is the 70-30 calculation. Prior to FY 2016, AS 1417.50 stated a district shall budget for and spend a minimum of 70% of its school operating expenditures in each fiscal year on the instructional component of the district budget. This provision has since been repealed. However, the 70% mark is still a measure that guides school spending throughout the state. With this budget proposal, you can see that the instructional component will be rounded up to 78%, but 77.54%, whereas instructional support, as defined by the state of Alaska, represents 22.5%. We believe a better depiction and something that would make more sense to the community is to consider these costs based on what's school related and where the costs show up in our operations. And when you consider school related costs, you can see that over 94% of all of their costs are dedicated to schools. This includes the cost to maintain, to heat, to light schools, student activities, and then school admin support or the front office support for schools. When you consider all of those costs plus the instructional component, you're at 94%. District administration support represents 5.8%. That concludes the presentation tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have. The resolution is technically the non-action item, and that's because we adopt and transmit the balanced budget to the borough in resolution format, and then we accompany that with all of the budget schedules. So that's why you see the resolution.
Is there any public comment at this time on this item? Yes, Mr. Pavement.
My name is Eugene Colhaven, I live in Matsu now. I follow the public process, and the public process to an appropriate decision made by the governing body is more likely in the public interest. Number one, you've got a budget here, you've got revisions, but things constantly change. You're not looking at what if state's not going to cooperate. And look at what's in the worldview of oil prices right now. Is it going to get any better? State promises Remember, they're still in session. And remember also, you're asking the cooperation of the Borough Assembly, but then they're relying on what ifs. So one would expect you to be very conservative and careful and not jump the gun on this scenario. Now, there's other thing is what ifs. I do appreciate the presentation of the superintendent tonight. It was careful thought, respectfully, and it just was not just thrown out. But what about the financial costs of the school district and dealing with that issue in the future? What are you all going to have? What's going to be the cost? You already had one item discussed and said there may be costs, but regarding the actions you took on one area. But there'll be other decisions that are going to be made, and there's going to be financial costs to the school district, as well as other communities. So you have reviewed that situation and put in a situation of what are those other costs. I don't see it here. I also see it on the 2.5 million use of fund balance. What's left of that fund balance? You're saying $2.5 million of fund balance, but then what about tomorrow, next year, the year after? We as a state constantly using our rainy day accounts. And this last year is showing that there is an anxiousness of going after the DFT. That's what's happening. There's a big direction in that issue. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but look what we've done. And we cannot do it on this budget here, say, deplete our rainy day accounts. We have to look for the future. And things constantly change, especially with what we did not expect 3-4 months ago, with the report that the superintendent provided. It was not in our horizon. And what we don't know, we need to plan for. We've got two crises, a financial crisis for the state, and we've got a world health crisis right now. And those are financial costs. And is this the way to go? So I'd like to remind you in closing, the fact is that even if the Borough Assembly approves something, you've seen the way things change, and all of a sudden, the Assembly has to go back after what the legislature does, or vetoes by the governor and so forth. So let's work together and figure it all out, and not make rush judgments. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address the bench on this topic?
Can I just, 10 words? 10 words, that's all?
Yeah.
That's all.
All I'm going to say is this, you don't have contract right now with the teachers. What is the cost of that? That's hanging out there. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, board discussion on this topic now. Yes, Mr. Larson.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Yes.
This, to the borough, takes in their 6.3 mill rate, correct?
That's correct.
And we are going to use 2.5 million on fund balance and reducing 5 full teachers by $426,000. And then we have all the adjustments due to the increases of non-personal site-based budgets and so forth and so on. And we're reducing all that. So we reduce teachers, we reduce charter revenue adjustment, we reduce 3.3 reduction in non-personal site, Medicare, and transportation, we're still using 2.5 million. As an addition into the budget. So we're running into somewhat of a deficit already in this budget coming up. Is that correct? By 2.5 million?
That's correct.
And that's because of all the increases in CEA and the MA and the principals. The principals contracting the CEA contracts that we agreed on have increased by about that amount. Is that what I'm reading here?
No, those two alone would not add up to $2.5 million for FY '21. there are contributing factors. Our salaries are certainly contributing factors.
Contributing factors, and then the increase of the regular stuff is contributing factors. And we're also still reducing teachers by, the whole teachers by 5, correct?
Yes. Though the whole teachers, if the board wants to kind of consider this budget proposal includes no reduction to current staff levels. No positions that are being filled today by teachers or support staff, and it considers no reduction to staffing levels across the board in terms of PTR. The whole teachers serves as a salary contingency, more or less, but it's set apart specifically for certified staff and helps us with registration numbers. One thing that the board should know and have some assurance in addition to the 5 full teachers, this budget still includes a 1% of salaries and benefit contingency for payroll. So you have the 5 full teachers plus 1% of salaries and benefits, and that makes up your total staffing contingency going into next year.
Yeah, so there's still a contingency there.
There is, which is important because this is all based on enrollment of next October.
But between the 3.3 reduction, the charter adjustment, reduction, and the reduction of 5 full teachers, you're talking about close to $1 million. The Medicare calculation correction, what exactly is that?
We participate in any Medicaid eligible services that the district provides to eligible students. Medicaid pays for those health and related services provided in schools when covered services are provided to Medicaid enrolled children and adolescents, or when services are provided to children through their individualized education plans or IEPs. And what we utilize to participate in this program is a partnership with the state Medicaid office. And the way that this works is there's non-federal sources that are considered as part of the cost for providing these Medicaid eligible services, which are provided through our regular staffing of related service providers like occupational therapists, related physical therapists, and school sites. So as we are providing those services, a portion of the costs are federal costs, and a portion of them are non-federal costs, and the state is the portion that's non-federal. They receive a portion of the reimbursement for providing those services. And so what we did on that adjustment is the portion that goes of revenue that goes to the state for the Medicaid revenue, and a portion of expenses that is attributable to the state. Both of those were pulled out of the budget, and we consulted with our auditors on the proper accounting treatment for this, and they agreed with that.
So it's just kind of a movement.
It is, and it has the net impact to the deficit or overall budget is it actually, because of the adjustments were a little different, it wasn't total wash. It actually reduced our expenses more than it reduced our revenue, so it actually helped us.
Is that the Medicare care correction?
Yes.
Calculation correction above also?
Yes.
Adjustment?
The two offset.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
So overall, what I see in this adjustment is 2.5 million of the fund balance and another $1 million that we've reduced. So we would go into a deficit. We have spent 3.5 million either in reductions or fund balance movement in order so we wouldn't go into a deficit mode. That is right.
Yes.
And the 65,000 for PFP, is that just what you figure is going to be an average? It's kind of a guess, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, we looked at what the state was able to recoup in terms of 50% of the proceeds, and they had pretty good participation from Alaska residents. About $500,000 went into this education raffle fund for specifically, well, probably closer to $1 million because 50% is going into education. So we had $500,000 that was allowable for education, and our adjusted average daily membership portion of that was very close to 65,000. We're including that in the budget because this will be a recurring revenue source in years to come. It's small, but it should be included for completeness and to make sure that we're accounting for all revenue within the budget proposal.
The only positive thing, and I'll stop here, the only positive thing that may happen next year is they may sort of kind of possibly put more money into the BSA. There's a couple of bills out there for that, is that correct?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
And how many years has the BSA not had money? We've had a lot of one-term money put in here, but how many years has the BSA stayed flat?
If we went into next year with the same BSA amount, we would be looking at an adjusted base student allocation that was less than the amount it was in 2015. So you're looking at 6 years, but a decrease. And it will be the other thing that's important to note, because in my time in school finance in the state of Alaska, I've not seen this, is the amount of portion for the base student allocation would be less next year than it is in the current year, because we're receiving one-time funds in the current year, which are going away in FY21. That would be the first time that I would have seen, I've been putting budgets together for 15, 16 years in the state of Alaska, that'd be the first time that I've seen the BSA lower in a subsequent year than it was in the prior year.
And then one other lingering problem out there is a 50-50 bond split. It used to be 70-30, and now it's 50-50. How much money is that per year that would have to be, lost from the 70-30 to 50-50? Is that $8 million a year, or is that more?
It's 8, and it, over time, as debt is retired over the course of the next 20 plus years, that we have those debt schedules with the state, because those bonds are 20-year issuances. So I believe it's 15 years that we have of outstanding debt obligations over the next 15 years. I believe if you looked at each of those years, last time I did this, which was recent because it was a board discussion, it's about $8.5 million next year, but over the next 15 years, it averages around $6 million total for each of the year's obligations.
And the borough paid this year's and next year's bond debt extra so far.
My understanding is that there's a credit for at least next year. I will defer to Dr. Boyer if she has more information on that.
From what we presented, what the Assembly has discussed with the board at the last joint meeting, it's our understanding that we believe that they, through restructuring of some existing debt and existing money, that for the next 2 years, that they have identified funds.
Is that 2 years, 2001, 2002, or is that 2 years this year and next year?
I think what I can do is I can reach out to the borough's finance director, and we can provide an update in the board connect. That's a good question.
And just looking at what may be lingering out there that's here, just thank you very much.
Well,
Mr. Palmer.
Thank you. Appreciate the information. A few questions on slide 12. It states that the very first bullet point says no increase to salary schedule for NSEA and LMA. Third bullet point says total certificated salary increase by 1.36%. A regular movement on salary schedule. We just
slide 12. Yeah, so the first bullet point represents what would be referred to as a cost of living adjustment or a negotiated increase that increases each cell within the salary schedule for the MSEA and NLMA. So that would be done through a negotiated agreement adjustment for the unions. But even without that, we do have increases in those for those employees. And that's because regular movement from year to year, the longevity, the step increases that they are eligible for when their salaries go up in terms of an aggregate amount, and it goes up by 1.36% for the total group.
not by cells, but overall, the total group on the whole step chart goes up by 1.36%.
Yes, and that takes into consideration those that are eligible to move and those that are at the top of the columns that are not eligible to move. So on average, it's about 1.36%.
But every cell on that schedule has some increase.
When you move from, BA 00, step 0, if they're placed at the beginning of the salary schedule this year, in FY21, they'll be at BA 00, they'll be placed at BA 0, step 1. And so that will be the salary increase that they would receive, and that's what we mean by regular movement.
Okay.
If they're at the top of that column, we don't have them budgeted for more movement beyond that.
At the top of the column, they don't, their salary stays stagnant and
No,
that doesn't increase.
that's correct. The thing that we do have budgeted in here based on trend data is how much of the salaries are going to increase as a result of column movement, which is an elective movement based on additional credits earned for teachers. And so we've looked at over time what that cost is to the district. We're able to pull that and extract that fairly easily from our payroll system, and that is built into these projections.
And everything about this is a balanced budget, correct? I mean, this is how we come out balanced.
This is balanced budget, yes, sir.
All right, and so on slide, we don't have to go to slide 5, but on slide 5 it says reduction of 5 whole teachers, but then on slide 12 it says that it includes 5 whole teachers, and that's saying that it includes 5 whole teachers being reduced.
They're one and the same because we started with 10.
Okay.
So the current budget includes 5, that's a true statement, and from February, it's a reduction of 5 because we had 10 in the February budget.
Okay. And then on slide 16, it states that there's classroom teachers, proposed preliminary is 734 FTE.
That's correct.
Of that, how many of those are either teacher on special assignment or instructional coaches?
We can follow up and work next.
They're included in this.
Oh, yes, they're included in that.
They're included in that,
Yes.
Each of the large elementaries has an instructional coach. It's funded half-time out of the general operating fund and half-time out of federal programs. And we can, the board connect how many teachers on special assignment there are.
Okay, great, thanks. And then being a balanced budget, I'm just curious to know which of the expenses on either 17 or 18 slide, where do we cut even further in order to ensure that we're not operating at a deficit, but can come out of the teacher negotiations with happy teachers?
I can't speak for the board. That's a decision the board would have to make.
Where the cuts will come from?
Administration can provide recommendations around that, but the board will eventually have to decide on where subsequent cuts will come from. We've not provided that analysis today. That wasn't part of where we thought we needed to be for a $2.9 million deficit and closing the gap there.
Gotcha. Generally, where might they come from? Just looking at a balanced budget and trying to understand. Maybe.
Well, when we talk about our budget, it's comprised of 83%, over 83% is salaries and benefits. So you're looking at the vast majority of the operating budget is staff, and that's not going to change. And so that is eventually where the board would have to look for cuts. Some of the additional other costs in terms of programmatic costs or student activities. You get into some really difficult situations with utilities, those are really hard costs. Insurance premiums, the cost to insure our facilities or property insurance, those are really subject to market pressures. So, but we have not conducted any sort of analysis for the board yet to determine additional cuts beyond where we are at today.
Thank you.
Seeing no further board discussions, thank you, Mr. Folk. Moving on to non-action item C, FY21 School Board Meeting Schedule Draft. Go ahead, Administrative Report.
This is the draft for next school year, and this follows the first and third Wednesday of each month.
Is there any public comment on the schedule at this time?
My name is Eugene Cohen, I live in Matsu Valley. All the public process and public practice not appropriate decision made by the governing body more likely than public interest. I'd like to call to your attention, it says draft, so that means changes also down below, tentative calendar, subject changes and cancellations. But let's look at the reality. You hold your regular meetings here, but there are other meetings. You're known to hold meetings outside of here to other locations in the borough to connect with the people. I don't have as much problem with that, but I do have a serious problem when you go into the classification of work sessions inside them where very few people can be in there, and members of the public see many of your backs. You will encourage a situation with respect that there is no place for public comment. State law and all public means provide a reasonable opportunity to be heard. Now, I'm not concerned about you wanting to deal with issues, but you need to connect with people and you need to be in this room. Also, there's another issue. Your joint meetings with the Borough Center. Let me remind you, what you got there, it can be changed, and you have done that. You were your last joint meeting of the school board in the Assembly. You were over there in the Assembly. Instead of being on the high with the Assembly members, you were in the break room with a scenario that very few people can fit in there in the public, and the end result is telling the public this is not for us. And also note this key concern. When you do those meetings over the Assembly, there is a video over there with the borough in that room, but not the break room. And then their videos, if they do audio or video, is different from here. With respect, and you've got more stress this. You've got a good crew on video team in the back. They're doing a great job. But the flexibility is that borough does not have it. When they move outside that room, that main room, if you go to the website and you see where the regular meetings are, there's a different place to that setting, even in the break room. They have difficulty putting it right next to the others. So it's hidden away. That's what happens. So, in summation is, you need to, when passing this, you need to put these amendments in this thing, not just to pass this, and recognize and call attention to my concerns with not connecting the public appropriately, and stop those actions. And I remind you one more thing, at all public meetings, you provide a reasonable opportunity for the public to be heard. Being in that room, your work sessions, you have no place on the agenda for the public. You violate state law. I'm encouraged in this meeting tonight where I see more cooperation in my comments and not a resistance. Thank you. And I hope that we'll continue to have less resistance and more responsibility in connecting with the people. Thank you.
Is there any other board public comments at this time on this item? If not, is there any board discussion at this time on this item? Yes, Dr. Rowan.
Do we want to project a place for September 2nd and for May 5th?
We defer to the board. We usually hold one kind of on one side of the valley and one on the other. One thing that I had meant to have prepared and I did not, and I apologize, is where we've been in like the last 5 years. It's something that I can get out at the next board meeting. That way, I think the board can make a more informed decision about the location of where a good meeting for next year be.
Is there any further board discussion on this item? Seeing none, we will move on to item 9, persons to be heard on non-agenda items. Dr. Well?
Rules were read earlier, and so just to remind you, speaker states his or her name for the record. The speaker is limited to 3 minutes, and the speaker is limited to non-agenda items, and the speaker is to make general comments of general nature.
Is there anyone at this time who wishes to approach the board? Mr. Haywood.
valid call, public process, and the public process done appropriate, decision made by the governing body is more likely in the public interest. Thousands of people in the United States every year die because of the flu. The practice at meetings I attend, and you know it's been for years, I would witness send the members from the Borough or Anchorage coming sick. We would have students going, parents sending students to school sick. That has been the practice. And it continues to be the practice in reference to, as recently as last Saturday, I attended a last judicial council meeting in a small room with the Supreme Court Justice and counsel. And in that room, a few in a very small room, they were discussing the bylaws, no place for public comment, and they had a vote to allow the document to get to me, the public. But the thing is, 3 people in that small room sick. This is what goes on. Now we have this worldwide crisis. It is a crisis of the unknown, putting a lot of fear. But in respect, I appreciate the superintendent's presentation tonight. Very thorough, a lot of thought. I appreciate that. Because I have been witnessing how Anchorage has responded. I was at the Assembly Health Committee at 10 o'clock this morning. I addressed, as witness, how the Borough Assembly has been responding. I witnessed Assembly members in Anchorage 8 days ago saying, when I addressed concerns, it's overblown. But as the superintendent tonight says, this is not something that's overblown. We don't know. We have to deal with it with respect. But I also appreciate the comments by Rutherford earlier that says these decisions cannot be made in a vacuum. I repeat that. These decisions cannot be made in a vacuum. And the end result is, I realize the emergency. Your comments tonight were a great deal of thought. I realize you had to make a decision. But also, where is that plan, by the way, for us to deal with? I don't see that plan in Anchorage. I don't see that in Assembly. I don't see it anywhere. We're dealing with nothing, basically, and hoping to make the right decisions. And it's constantly changing by the hours. And we have tours coming in. But just closing this thing is, what was I going to say is, forgive me, I deal with a lot. Would a couple of days have been more helpful before you had to make that decision because of what happened with a few parents and costs? But I want to remind them too, we have a big unknown cost, people's lives. People's lives. And what I see is, another thing is, it's consistent, but there's more thought here tonight. We hear the situation of symptoms, but we're also hearing, that I'm not hearing in Anchorage, I'm not in other locations, is that people could be a carrier and we don't know about it. That's what we're dealing with. So let's pray, let's try to work together, and let's be respectful of those who are in the wrong stuff. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to approach? Seeing none, moving on to item 10, future items, future business. A, upcoming meetings. March 18th, 2020, 6 p.m., regular school board meeting at the MSBSD Central Office. March 24, 2020, 6 p.m., joint assembly board meeting, assembly chambers. Moving on to item 11, correspondence and board committee reports. Is there any board committees reports out there? Yes, Dr. Roll.
I was privileged to attend the Matsu Central's AAC meeting and on Tuesday. It was an hour and a half, plus I had to leave after an hour and a half, so I don't know how much longer they went, but there was discussion of the school issues concerning safety, parking lot, issues of walking students to the classrooms when they do have classroom work, and how difficult that is for parents who have multiple children and have to pack them all out of the vehicle in order to get them into the school. So they're looking at issues there. There's a lot of classes and activities, and their schedule is being worked on for next year. And there's participation issues with people signing up for a particular enrichment and then not showing up. And there's also issues with a lot of students being in the hallways and they aren't actually scheduled to be anywhere. So there's going to be a a little bit more supervision and checking to make sure that students are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They were very good at looking at all the new activities and the activities that provide the enrichment for students. I think that the board was very involved in participation. They had some members by teleconference or video conferencing, and I thought that was really a good situation. And so I hope to be able to attend the next couple of meetings that they have to finish out the school year. Thank you.
And I have 2 pieces of correspondence. I received email contact with the president of the Anchorage School Board, and that was just establishing dialogue between herself and myself on whatever future issues may come between, that might be relevant for the 2 boards. So basically that was an introduction. And then I sent off email contact to the president of the Bering Strait School District School Board, congratulating them on the performance of the Bering Strait School District's academic decathlon team. So that was a positive note that I figured I'd send out there, considering that one of the school board members there was a former student of mine many, many years ago. So those were my 2 pieces of correspondence that were with other school districts. Okay, moving on to item 12, comments from board and administration. Dr. Goyette, would you bring forth the administration?
Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Holt?
No comment.
I just have 2 brief things that I'd like to talk about. Tomorrow is the annual Tech Expo. If you've never been to that, I highly encourage you to go. It has grown so large, we moved into the Menard Sports Center, and it is fantastic. Kids get so excited, and there'll be all sorts of students coming in that are busing. So between 10 and 3, it will be open, and a lot of schools do kind of a field trip out to it, and then from 5 to 7, it will be open in the evening as well. And I'd like to close by recognizing our longest-standing certified teacher, Sharon Russell. She started with the school district in 1968. She spent her entire career, over 5 decades, at Sharon Elementary, teaching both 4th and 5th grade. And I was with the staff last week when they learned of her passing, and they talked about how committed she was to kids, always welcoming new staff that was in the building. One of my favorite, most touching stories was a current teacher, her partner. She was her student when she was a 4th grader. And she brought in her report card for Mrs. Russell. And Mrs. Russell had told her in the 4th grade that she needed to practice her multiplication facts. And so when she brought it to her just a couple of years ago as a colleague, Mrs. Russell looked down at her and said, "Well, did you?" Which I think sums up the high expectations that she had. Her services will be at Palmer High School on March 14th, Saturday, and we thank her family for the sacrifice that she made and the commitments that she made to our school district. Thank you. Good evening.
Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for a public comment. It's always great to hear from so many people in the audience, and this was one of our biggest nights for public comment, so that really is great to see everyone who's coming out and participating. I'd also like to thank everyone who put together the presentations that we saw tonight. They put in a lot of work. I've done a presentation before, and I know how much goes into it, so thank you for that, and thank you for answering our questions. And hopefully through some more research, we can get some more questions answered. I'd also like to pass on my regards to Ms. Russell's family and to her school community. I know teachers can have a huge impact on their students. I hope that her students are doing okay through this rough time. Thank you.
Member Potter.
President Berge, I just love the opportunity to follow someone more intellectual and eloquent than I. Thank you for that opportunity. I would just like to thank everyone for all of the presentations that were provided, all the information that was done. I also appreciated all of the public comment that was provided this evening and placed on the record. Also want to commend the school district and their leadership of making a decision that needed to be made regarding an epidemic virus that the human populace has never seen before. So appreciate that, and I look forward to hopefully hearing about or even coming over and participating in some wonderful negotiations with EF Tours. In addition to that, Emerson Moser, he presented before the board some issues that he had seen and experienced in regards to GPA. Had the opportunity this past week to meet with him, and that young man has put together a whole binder of what the problem is, what the solution could be to ensure that those who are at the top of their class, highly competitive for college scholarships, college entrance, so on and so forth, when class rank is so important, how to ensure that the class rank goes to the appropriate individual who has taken the classes, who has received the grades, and doesn't come out below someone else who's maybe taken a study hall and didn't receive a grade, but yet has the credit there and maintains a higher class rank. So really appreciate all of his work and look forward to speaking more on that to the policy committee. Again, my respects as well to Ms. Russell, who has dedicated a lifetime to our kids.
Member Taylor.
I'm grateful tonight for the comments that were made about the number of people that are applying for our technical school, VOTEC. It encourages me to think we're on the right path with Houston and building in more CTE opportunities for them and for more of our students around. I think that is a wonderful future for our students. I'm excited for that and hear the excitement that's out there. I want to thank Dr. Goyette and the rest of the administration for quick actions regarding the point of the coronavirus. They'd like to support them and believe they made the correct decision for that. And condolences to the Russell family, but also our congratulations to them for a great example in our community. For them. That's it. Thank you.
Member Larson.
Thank you. I thought the career tech public speaking was very interesting where the individual said that he would build the classroom if we got the teachers. I've never heard of anybody wanting to offer that kind of labor and money to the school district. And I don't take that lightly, and I'm not sure what we can do with that, but I would like I would like us to at least look at that. I mean, that man was sincere, and I thought that was interesting. And I'm 100% in agreement that I'd love to try to get those 47 kids into career tech somehow. There's an opportunity that parents see as a lifetime commitment for them. And I know that if we got those 47 in the career tech, there would be another 47 next year that couldn't get in. But what he offered this school district was phenomenal, and I don't think that we should just treat it like it was it didn't exist. I think we should actually take a look at it, but that's my opinion. And I thought it was a great gesture on his part. Well, actually, I would like to. I don't know if we can do something like that. It's just absolutely out of the wall, out of the box thinking on a parent. Because when you're talking about offering a classroom, you were talking. I don't know what it takes to build them. I remember what it took to build them years ago. I think it was $96,000 the last time, and if you build it on your own, or the school district built it, it was $70-some thousand. So, please, let's take a look at that. The virus, the coronavirus issue is panicking. The world, I've never seen anything quite like it when the stock market drops 3,500 points in 4 days. There's a panic out there, a lot of unknown. So to make a decisive decision on it is a tough choice, and I take my hat off to this administration for making that choice. That's going to be a tough one. It's going to be an interesting part of history to watch and follow as it unfolds. Hopefully it unfolds in a very positive manner, that they'll be able to come up with a cure for it or a shot for it and reduce the whole thing before it goes out of hand. Because what I've been reading, like everybody else, you kind of have to take and adjust because you don't really know the truth behind it. Thank you for the budget update. I appreciate that. For next year's budget, it gives us a lot of thought. You do a lot of work a lot of times, and it's unsung, and I really do appreciate what you do in your department. It's astronomical that you've done that for years on end. And I appreciate the rest of the presentations and the lively discussion on the algebra course. I think we can work through that. I just want to remind the board that we did put that off for a little while, but they have to have a definitive answer to it from us because they've got to order this material. And my understanding is some of the courses, some of the algebra courses material are non-existent anymore. They can't redo that. They can't actually have that course again. So we have to go forward. It was like when we changed IT, student IT was failing and we had to go forward. We did the same thing there. So we have to make a decision on this mathematics. We can't put it off and we can't delay it. We have to get in there and make a sound decision of some sort of course material, because the course material that is in the past, that's what we've been using, is not going to be available anymore. At least that's my understanding. Thank you.
Member Trump.
My condolences also go out to the Russell family, and we really appreciate the sacrifice that she's made and the family has made to the school district, and the students especially. I don't know the circumstances surrounding the career tech issue completely. However, I do tend to agree with Member Larson. Over the past few years, we've had a charge of going out and trying to get business cooperation with the schools. And we've had some of the larger corporations do some things with us. I don't think we've had a small business like that offer something like that. So I don't know if we can do anything or not to cooperate with that, but it might be worth looking into. I agree with Mr. Larson on that. We made a decision a while back, and I'm not asking that this be brought forward now because I'm not on either side at this time, but we left the Alaska Association of School Boards, and I'm starting to wonder if maybe it would be worthwhile to look at rejoining that in the future. I should have brought it up in future items, I apologize. But I'm not ready to really bring that forward, but if other members are interested in that, they might want to look into that. They have a lot to offer on what they can teach boards and help them learn how to operate according to the way a board should operate. So I think that there could be possibly some value in that. And I encourage everyone that hasn't gone to the Tech Expo to head out there. gonna try to get out there tomorrow afternoon with my one kid that's decided he's gonna be homeschooled from now on, and see if I can't get him to get his work done in the morning, so we can get out there and walk around and he can get that experience also. So I encourage you all to go and take a look at that. It's a very enlightening experience. Thanks.
Member Weldon.
Thank you. Just about everybody has already said the things that I have on my list here. I want to thank Ms. Jensen for being so succinct and saying, that she appreciated the presentations and that she appreciated public participation. That's right there on my list. I wanted to also say condolences to Mrs. Russell's family. And I want to thank Luke for the budget presentation. And it's always interesting to me to look at how we have to operate on the budget and have a balanced budget, even though we don't know for sure until June what we actually are going to have. It is so wonderful that the borough has agreed to give us advance warning as to how we're doing things. And we know that that's time limited, that is a practice that we will have to keep. If we truly want to keep it, we're going to have to keep with the borough and keep telling them how wonderful that is, that we know where we are. I appreciate that a lot. I hope that in the next few weeks that people will look at the curriculum that was chosen for the math and really look to see what the problems that they see are. I do not see them. And maybe I'm just blind, but I think that it presents the information in a very good format. I enjoy playing with it myself, and I think that if you're working about wording of quote-unquote Common Core, that is just wording. It's not what the whole subject is about. I want to also thank the Matsu Central and their AAC board, their AAC committee for doing such a good job of involving all their parents in their committee. And I know that's what they're there for. As a homeschool, you need to have a parent involvement. That's what I have for tonight. Thank you.
Member Hart.
I'd like to also extend condolences to the Russell family and my appreciation to Mr. Paul. You juggle some awfully hot, fiery bowling pins, and appreciate the standing up to the firing squad. People have lots of questions. So thank you very much. To Eugene's points, I think we could stand to have a few more links on some of these agenda items. If we have something on here that refers to a bill or refers to something that's not immediately posted there, we should look to you to post it, or at least have the link immediately on that particular agenda item so people can research it. It doesn't matter what it is. He's absolutely right. We need to make not rely on the people to use Google to go looking for what could potentially be the wrong document. We need to actually put the document that we're talking about right here so they can see it. But again, thank you, everybody, members of the public, for your time, for coming in and putting up with our windiness.
I too would like to extend my condolences to the Russell family. CTE is a very important aspect of what we provide here at the district. That was evidenced by the number of individuals that have approached and the community of Houston looking for the CTE for their buildings. With the fiscal position the state is in right now, that makes partnerships with private companies and entities very important. And we need to actively continue to explore those routes. I wish to put my thanks out to the staff, and not just the staff here, but all the staff. every person who is employed with the district provides a critical role for helping us educate the children that we are entrusted to do, and that takes everyone. So my hat's off to our entire staff. I would encourage folks to go out to the website and take advantage of the poll for the superintendent search. We wish to get as much public feedback as we can, so I would encourage you to do that. I also like to say that I had the pleasure this weekend of attending the academic decathlon banquet for the state in Anchorage. And it was very pleasurable watching the future leaders of our state get paraded across the stage, winning awards for their accomplishments in literature, and economics, and mathematics, and biology. That was a thoroughly enjoyable evening for me, and plus all the parents and students as well. And then I would like to leave with one last thought tonight, and this is something we all need to remember, is that parents are a child's first and most enduring teacher. And with that concludes my comments, and now I'd like to entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Is there any objection? We are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. Don't forget to share. Facebook School's on you. If you share, don't forget to share. I will be posting this up onto YouTube in a few hours from now. It should be live there. I'll leave a link on Facebook for it. I will improve the sound quality so that you can be able to hear things a lot clearer than what you probably did today. Thank you all for participating, and hopefully we'll be doing this a lot more. And don't forget to look for the donation page. We are taking donations so that we can afford to be able to get out here and do this a lot more. Thank you.